Yeah. Uh, Hello, everybody. It's me, Ryan. I call it Shadows, along with a good friend of mine,
Hello, my name is
Jamison
Jamison
Jenson.
Jenson. Yep. So, Ryan, what do
Um,
you want to talk about?
that is a good question. We'll start off with what you asked me earlier. I do like Frank's Red Hot sauce quite a lot. It's just an
Hmm.
easy go-to.
Okay. What other
What about
hot
yourself?
sauces have you tried, my friend? I mean, I don't know what selection's like
Not.
over there in the UK.
I haven't tried an awful lot. I'm quite open to trying different sauces.
Hmm.
I've had Tabasco sauce a few times. Like, I know there's
Sure,
various levels to it.
sure. There's different
Um,
different flavors of Tabasco. You know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. See where I go, my preferred sauces. It's difficult for me. I live in a part of the world. I live in one of the most famous cities in the world, in Los Angeles, California, here in the United States. And it is on the border of, or the state I live in, the part of it is not too far from the border of Mexico. So hot sauces
Jesus.
is abundance. You know, whether it's actual salsas, various salsas, and no two salsas are the same. If I had to pick a store bought hot sauce, I'm a fan of Tapatio. I'm a fan of Chipotle smoked Tabasco. It's the
Hmm.
brown bottle, pretty good. Um, have you had? What have you had on this podcast, Ryan? Have you had Kevin or on it before?
I think he's been quite busy. We haven't had Kevin on yet now. That's why I was like, oh, for this special episode where we try and encourage other people that want to get involved. But unfortunately, other people have been busy, so just us
Mm,
two, just spitting away.
okay.
I haven't, no. Not yet.
No, the reason I ask, and you can ask Kevin about this. Myself, Kevin, and Scott Zero, the guy with gun, um, over in the SCW world, did the one chip challenge a couple years ago,
Hmm.
and it pretty much killed whatever spice tolerance I really had because it puts it into overdrive.
Hmm.
So I like spicy, like curry and various things, but I can't do spice like I used to because I
Yeah,
overdid it for charity. We did it for charity.
that's understandable. So, like, what charity did you do it for? And was it more spice rather than taste at that point? Like, you really like taste much from it?
We did it for the charity NAMI. I can't off the top of my head remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a charity for mental health.
Hmm.
October, I believe, is Mental Health Awareness Month. So that year, we got together and um, myself, I believe, guy with gun, um, Kevin under his switch name Cheyenne. So he streamed for a couple hours. SCW streamed for a couple hours, and I streamed for a couple hours, and we raised about $500, maybe $600
Oh,
for
nice.
charity. Um, and as a way of celebrating and doing more, we got together and a mutual acquaintance of ours sent us each, sent myself and Kevin a couple of these one chip challenges, and I believe Mr. Zero, um, he bought two on his own. He actually bought two of them.
Hmm.
Anyway, the chip itself had scorpion peppers, pepper X, jalapeno habanero. Um, it was the spiciest chip ever made um, commercially, and
Jesus.
it was coated in some kind of activated charcoal powder to kind of help mitigate a little bit of the spice. At least that's what they said on the box. I had the box in there somewhere. It comes in a casket or a coffin shape with the skull on the front.
What
But
the hell?
it there was no real taste to it at first. I mean, it tastes of charcoal, but that's really it. And then about 10 seconds later, the spice kicks in, and it starts off kind of warm and tingly, and then eventually it got to be too much for me. And the idea is to see how long you can last.
Yeah.
I was the first one out, I think, after about a minute, and Kevin stayed in it for like 5, I think, and then 0. He hit the 5-minute mark as well, but then he did something that no one thought he would do, and he actually ate a second one. But if you have a chance to talk with Kevin about it, ask him how that was.
Yeah.
And he might have, a very similar story. None of us have been the same since. And the three of us, if there's anything that the three of us can agree on, is that chip can go to hell. There have been times in the servers that we all three occupy that someone said the chip was not that spicy or couldn't be that spicy, and we all took it very personally.
Oh yeah, it's not like you're making it up, is it?
No, we took it very, very personally, and I try not to be like that. I try to be as carefree as I can. But when you're telling me that something is not painful and spicy, and you don't have the experience to back it up, I'm gonna say something about it, because what I went through is not for everybody. So,
oh yeah,
there you go.
I completely understand. Like, I've had on the terms of spicy stuff. I once had when I went through to see my dad for a bit years ago. One time, I think it was like a pumpkin soup, and it was like one of the spiciest things I've ever had. Like even spicier than most curries I've had. I was like, what the hell is in this?
A spicy pumpkin soup, you said?
Huh. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. See, I like curry. I like spicy stuff. But again, that chip is not something to mess around. And they make it hotter every year. Because there's
they do?
Yeah, because it started off, I think, just was like ghost pepper and habanero. They were the original one chip challenge. And then as time goes on, they genetically modify and create these peppers that don't occur in nature to make them spicier and hotter, just for these kinds of things. I want to say Pepper X or Cholula Scorpion or something like that is the hottest pepper in the world right now. It does not naturally occur in the world. It was crossbred, genetics, all that other stuff. So eventually it'll occur naturally, but where it originally came from is not a normal place.
Well, it's not something I'd like to try anytime soon, but maybe I could maybe try it on the podcast. That could be quite interesting to watch.
You know what? Normally in a situation like that, I'd say, I would join you, but in this instance, that will never happen. There's not enough money in the world. Well, there is enough money in the world, but there's not enough money that anyone I know can personally present me with that will actually make that happen. Because
I can't think of many people that haven't tried it that would want to try it, especially on
exactly.
Exactly. It could just be entertaining than anything else.
Yeah, and most remedies for something like that would be something dairy-wise, milk or ice cream, gelato, something, yogurt. None of that helps. If anything, it makes it worse. It made it completely worse. I have the video somewhere. It's on YouTube. And if anyone wants it, watching this, find it, or you hit me up and I can send you a link to it. Because we recorded it, we put it on YouTube. I re-edited it in a terrible fashion. I was not very good at editing at the time. The sound mixing is terrible. The music levels are horrible. But again, it was all done for charity. We took questions on stream while we did it. It was one of those things where it brought me and two very good friends of mine, brought us closer together in pain. So don't recommend it.
Yeah, maybe I might give some of the hot sauces from the Hot Ones YouTube a try as well. Seen some of their videos before.
Sure. I've done one of those hot sauces before. Of old manager of mine, when I was a bartender, he bought the the Last Dab Apollo, which was the hottest one. Geez, like maybe 5 years ago, and it was pre-COVID, I believe. Anyway, it had like they called chocolate peppers in it, and it didn't taste of chocolate in the least. It was a thick green slurry of something. It was no. People that just eat that stuff by itself, I'll never understand it.
It's like, have you ever seen some of these food challenges that some people do, where they'll be like, you gotta eat all of this in like 30 minutes, and you get like a T-shirt or your food paid. It's like,
exactly.
I don't know how they do it. Like, do they just not eat beforehand? Do they do lots of exercise? Like, it just seems ridiculous.
The people that do those challenges on a regular basis prepare in one way or another for them. There was a TV show over here in the U.S. On the Food Network, because we have a Food Network here, called Man vs. Food, and it was literally just a guy going around the country, and that's all he did, do different challenges. And America's a funny place like that. I have not traveled outside the country. I would love to when I have the time and the money. It's quite expensive, especially living where I live. But in Las Vegas, Nevada, here where SCW is based, in kayfabe, there is an eatery called the Heart Attack Grill, and their gimmick is that they have a digital scale outside the restaurant, and if you weigh over 320 pounds, you eat for free.
Jesus.
Yeah. We are very strange here in the U.S.
I just like, see, I don't know if it's the same one, but I did see that there was one in America where it was like they attack you with like a paddle or something if you don't complete it.
It's the same one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Las Vegas is a town, and it's a lot smaller than people think it is, really, because most of the stuff you see on television or movies, you read it on the internet, is all contained to just the city of Las Vegas, which more or less is really more just contained to what's called the Strip, which is just casinos and where all the tourists go, and there's attractions to look at. It's really, I'd say, maybe 2 or 3 square miles. So not that not very much in kilometers, but I mean it's all centralized to right there. Once you get outside the city, there's a bunch of stuff to be done, but it's not what people expect, right? The lights, glitz, and glamour is all centralized to the Strip. I have friends that live there, and after about a year, much like living in Los Angeles here, where I live now, after about a year, the allure of it kind of wears off. If you're not the type to go and gamble or go and excessively drink or excessively eat or are really into big showy, big business kind of stuff, it's it gets boring. There's obviously stuff to do, but the stuff that people see in Vegas is really for the tourists, not for the locals. So
I say that surprises me, because I suppose it could be like anywhere where eventually it can be quite monotonous and like very same.
Mm-hmm. It is. It can be, and if you go there with the intent to have fun and whatnot, you can always have fun on the Strip. But again, a lot of it is based around drinking and gambling. Being that it's Las Vegas, there's a lot of, I'll say, adult entertainment to be had there as well. And if it's just not something that appeals to you, then being on the Strip loses its appeal very quickly. But there's a lot to see. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot to be seen around Nevada, California. Once you get outside the main cities, there are parts that most people don't know about. They're absolutely beautiful and gorgeous, especially here in California, where I live. That I'm still discovering.
It's funny that you mentioned Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because my mum and dad will be going there soon on like a holiday, I think. Where would you personally recommend them to try and visit? Yeah.
Well, what kind of people are they? What do they like to do for fun? I mean,
well, I don't know if he necessarily does it anymore, but he used to sometimes play poker every now and then. They like their music, a bit of all sorts, really.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's something for everybody in Las Vegas. once you get away from the strip, there's other portions of the town that are not just based around gambling. You can go to Fremont Street, and Fremont Street is just a cacophony of insanity. There's always concerts going on. There's street performers, magic, contortionists, whatever, and people will pay for a little circle to stand in on Fremont Street that is maybe 3 feet across, and they will pay, and people will throw money at them. They'll tip them for whatever. The last time I was in Las Vegas was a couple years ago, and I was there for about a week, and there were no less than 3 or 4 concerts going on at the same time in the same area, because they have multiple stages going on. And it's on one side you might have a Guns N' Roses cover band. On the other hand, you have country music, or you've got big band going on. But it's a place to go. You can take your kids. It's not all, Vegas is based around the entertainment and gambling industries. Away, that's how they make their money. But there's not just that. There's gift shops, there's restaurants, lights, sounds. It's a lot. So if your parents are visual folks, Fremont Street is a great place to go. There is a 9-foot tall sheet metal built praying mantis that breathes fire on Fremont Street, and it is the, at least for me, because I'm a giant child at heart. Excuse me. For me, that stuff, I mean, you hear the flame go, you hear the flamethrowers going off, and it attracts your attention. But to see it, because the thing will move, and there's someone nearby controlling it, and they'll talk to people. Like the mantis will come down and it'll get within 5 feet of you, but it'll talk to you because someone's controlling it from afar. There's all kinds of stuff to be done. There's adult parks. So when I say adult parks, I don't mean anything adult oriented so much as there's parks that are built, like playgrounds built for adults, swing sets and treehouse, and just for adults to do. Because Vegas is at its core about freedom and about leaving responsibility behind, at least in my personal opinion. Could I live there? No. I don't have the patience for a town like Las Vegas. Los Angeles is hustle bustle enough for me, and it is. I mean, it's very, very busy here, especially with movie studios, and TV is shot here and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, if recommendation, if your parents, like to enjoy a drink or two, there's plenty of places to go. There are plenty of exquisite restaurants that look very fancy but don't cost a whole lot of money. There's plenty of places that look very quaint and smaller that cost a lot of money. It just kind of depends on what they want to do, but there is something for everybody.
I think I don't know if I've mentioned to anybody else on the podcast, especially people that are from America, but that's something I think they may already know. But the tipping sort of side of things when it comes to America is of how different the how money works over there, where there's not always a set wage in certain jobs and stuff.
Tipping culture here, for better or worse, is rampant. It really is. Without getting too much into the politics of it, because I don't believe that I'm not one to really talk politics a lot. I kind of keep it to myself, just because I don't like to argue with people and politics, especially right now in the U.S. where we're about to have our next presidential election here in a couple of weeks. Politics are very charged, and I'm not really up to having uncivil discourse with people. A lot of people I know kind of frown upon that, but at the same time, I've got a lot more to worry about in my life than who someone's going to vote for. I vote for the person that affects me. But going back to tipping, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I don't know how well publicized it is outside of the U.S., is that the reason tipping culture is so prevalent and so rampant here is because, at least in the food service and the beverage service industry, certain places in the U.S. can pay you less than the federal minimum wage.
And that's just ridiculous.
Exactly, with the caveat that you make tips. And then I've known people, I've been those people that has to survive on tips. I'm lucky enough to have a job that pays me well enough that I can skimp by every month. I can make my bills and have maybe $150, maybe $200 to my name after everything's said and done. But again, I live in one of the most expensive cities, if not the most expensive city in the world. So that's my personal choice. But an example being that the federal minimum wage is around $16 and change, almost $17. I make $20 an hour. I don't get tips, but I mean, I'm barely able to afford the apartment I have. Gasoline, petrol, whatever you want to call it, wherever you're at in the world, is expensive here. And it's maddening. And a lot of people will say that, those people that have jobs rely on tips should go seek other work if they don't want to, have to rely on tips. Well, I'm of the mind that you should pay
It's not
people.
always easy as that, yeah.
Well, exactly that. It's not easy as that. And I believe that people should be paid what's called a living wage. That's all there is to it. The base minimum. I'm not saying that you should get paid enough to have, a 14-bedroom mansion somewhere fancy, but I should be able to make enough money to afford the place I have right now, and not worry about, am I going to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to eat, that kind of stuff? And there's a lot of people in the world, over, not just here in the U.S., that have to go through that. Versus other places, I know in the world, Canada, Mexico, pays their employees a little better, and housing isn't as expensive. But again, there's pluses and minuses, ups and downs, pros and cons to every system out there. I know in certain parts of the world, tipping is considered rude.
I think it's very dependent on the situation and the place you're in. One of the things I've started to go by, especially for me, myself, in the UK, is because I don't know if you have this in America as much, but there's been sort of this culture, especially since COVID, where you won't even see the servers that much. It'll be like, oh, do you know how QR codes work? Please scan that and pay. It's like you don't see the servers much, like at all. You don't see that hospitality as in what the job would usually come with. So I think sometimes some people might go with the idea of, well, if I'm not getting served and there's no interactability, where's the not benefit, but where's the as need, I suppose you could say, to tip? Because where's the service to tip from if there was no service?
Sure, and that makes perfect sense. My dad is that way. He will tip if you provided him with a service. The problem being that, again, it comes down to a lot of it is the food and beverage industry, at least in my experience. Someone that came from that for years. Whether someone does an online order or whether it's in person, the person behind the counter is getting paid the same amount of money per hour, right? And the problem is, with COVID being what it was, and where it still is in parts of the world, people got used to doing everything online. Where that's Uber Eats, DoorDash, other food delivery services you might have in the UK, I believe you and I talked about before, in private. That got boosted because the world essentially shut down. So everything went contactless. So businesses realized that is a majorly beneficial thing, and it helped them make even more money. They can cut out the middleman, so to speak, and you can just pay them directly. And then why would you have to pay? Why would you have to tip and pay for the employees that are making your food when they're not there, right? But people also forget that those tips don't just go to a server or to a host or a waiter, right? Those tips will go to the kitchen staff, people that make your food. So do I think that you should tip as much for getting something ordered and delivered online versus in person? No. I think that if I'm in person at a restaurant, I will tip out far better than I would if I'm going to order something online. I might kick a couple dollars towards it. Let's just say it's It's almost 8:30 at night here in the U.S. here in Southern California. If I were to go on Uber Eats or DoorDash and have them deliver me some ice cream, just for the sake of argument, I might kick them $1 or $2 because the delivery driver doesn't see a lot of that money either. I've done food delivery service; they don't see a lot of that money. So those $2 are going to go towards the delivery driver, and they do get taxed on those tips. That's the other thing people don't realize is that if you pay with a credit card, the tips are taxed as well versus cash tips. I worked for an establishment that will remain nameless because where I used to live, they're very prevalent. That if you took in cash tips, it was up to you if you wanted to claim those on your taxes or not. I might have shot myself in the foot, but again, I'll never say where I worked, just because I know better than that. And that's how I was able to make my rent. It was cash tips, tax-free. Well, not really tax-free money because that got taxed on my rent. That money went somewhere. Those money went for goods and services, gasoline, groceries, wherever. But cash tips, and most people pay with a card now too. So
yeah, it's like you never quite always see the full extent of your wage because you sometimes get the idea of why is the incentive sometimes to work a bit more because sometimes you just get taxed more anyway. So it's like a never-ending cycle.
Exactly. And it's crazy. I mean, that's something else that kind of, and forgive me for going on a tangent, it's kind of, it bothers me in a way because I've been there. The food and beverage industry is not as easy as people think it is. Just because you're someone making a burger on a grill or wherever, I encourage people that say it's very easy to go and do that job. That's the best I can say. Because when I was a bartender, I thought my job was very easy because they made it look easy. And there was plenty of times where I told someone, okay, if you think it's easy, come behind the bar and do it. And they wouldn't. For a myriad of reasons, no one really would ever jump behind the bar, but it's the same idea. When you're working by yourself or with one other person and you have to worry about 50 other people, it's not easy because you have to make sure everything's being done right, especially if it's just 2 or 3 people. You have one cook and 2 servers, or one cook, a bartender, and a server, and everyone's got to be on their A game. You have to watch these 50 people and say, is this table going to be okay? Have these guys had too much? Have they gotten their food? Have they not? Are they upset? Is there a fight breaking out right now? It's a hassle, and I wish more people understood that. They would have a different outlook on stuff like that if they had done the job. So
it's crazy that I think before when you've mentioned how busy it can get, and then like the complete opposite where it's not busy. It's like
and it'd be like that. And those slow days also, some people think it's easy just to wait around for someone to walk in and order food or beverage. And you can clean something only so many times, or that boredom gets maddening.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I would be working by myself as the cook, the security, and the bartender and the server on certain shifts, and I would be waiting for people to come in, and that time drags. And you don't get a break sometimes. In my case, I never clocked out for my shifts. I was doing 12 hours at a time by myself. Yeah. And
that's ridiculous.
And the money was good. I was able to work on paper. I was able to work 4 to 6 days a month and make my rent and then some, and still save up money because of the tips I got. But again, that's working by myself. You work with other people to split that money. And it's less money in your pocket. I always had the mind something that the person who taught me how to bartend instilled in me. $1 a drink that's cool. Is it gonna get you over with every single person, every single tavern, pub you go to? No, but $1 a drink I think is not a terrible thing to ask. If you get 7 shots of liquor or 7 beers, cocktails, whatever, I think 1 per is fine. Food's a different story. People tip what they want on food and hope for the best. So,
yeah, it's certainly an industry that doesn't always get the attention in a good way that it probably should do, because it's like at least in the UK, there was like this whole eat out to help out sort of scheme where they were like encouraging people to do it that much more since COVID was
Mhm.
sort of like loosening up a little bit. But obviously, some people still didn't want to, and some people were still like, "Well, I'd rather just stay at home and get a takeaway." But at that point, it's not businesses. I think benefit more from people coming in, and
Mhm.
that interactability, and it's all balanced. It's a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, it's just something. It's not for everybody. It's like customer service is not for everybody either. I've been in customer service, entertainment, food and beverage, sales. I don't say I worked construction because I technically never have. I helped my friends when I was a kid. My friends' parents had a roofing company. I helped them a couple times in the summer. I've been a part in so much shape or form in a lot of different industries. The saying goes in America, a lot of buns in the oven, a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, whatever how you want to say it. Um,
Yeah,
and it's benefited me in that I have a different outlook on the world than a lot of people do because I've done a lot of different jobs. I recognize how difficult sometimes sales can be. I recognize how easy sometimes customer service can be when you learn to stand up for yourself and have a spine and just say no to people. Um, the phrase "the customer's always right" absolutely bugs me to no end because that's only half the saying. The real full
yeah,
saying is the customer is always right in matters of taste, but people only hear the customer is always right. So, and that it is what it is. And the industry I work in now is a little bit of everything. It's sales, it's customer service. I'm an office clerk. I work with legal documents all day, um, talking to automobile insurance companies and people that have unfortunately lost their cars for one reason or another. And it's you learn a lot about a lot of people, and you learn a lot about how to treat people. Empathy is huge, for sure.
oh, definitely. It's like um, sometimes people don't always want to see it from like different perspectives. Uh, Sometimes in customer service, on the experience I've had, a lot of time it can be, I want it now, and if it's not here now, why is it not here now? But it's not always easy
Mm-hmm.
as why. Like sometimes I've had it where a customer's been like, "Oh, why can't I come into the store?" I'm like, "Well, it's locked at night for your safety as much as it is mine," but they don't see it
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Well, and that's something I've had experience here, where I come from, where I was born in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Um, we didn't have that. There were convenience stores that were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They didn't lock up unless they absolutely needed to. Moving where I moved now in Los Angeles, certain convenience stores lock their doors at 11 o'clock at night. They're still open for business, but you have to go up to the window where the glass is, and there's a microphone. You got to talk to someone. I want that jug of water or that coffee or whatever, and they have to get it for you. And that was something I've never
Yeah,
experienced until a couple weeks ago, and it's very eye opening that it has to be that way for some people.
yeah. As I probably mentioned before, that's essentially what the main job that I do. On the nights, but because I've done it for over 4 years, I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm like, I'd rather not do nights.
Oh, sure.
it's 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 almost like its own different kettle of fish in how busy it is, but you
Mm-hmm.
never see the daylight. You're always catching up with your sleep in one way or
Mm-hmm.
another. And
Sure.
since we started doing alcohol, it's almost like it's like more frustrating than it needs to be because
Mm-hmm.
customers will like try your patience as much as they can.
Sure. When I was a bartender, my hours were 4 or 4:30 p.m., sometimes 3:30 p.m., and I wouldn't be off work until 4 or 5 a.m. So my sleep schedule was absolutely terrible. I would get home at, let's say, 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and I'd sleep until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Where everyone I know is out doing things on the weekends or whatever, and I'm used to only seeing the night. Like I see when the sun starts to come down versus when the sun's coming up. But I've worked jobs that are the opposite way too. like where I work now, I start work. Excuse me. I start work at 7 or 8 a.m. On Fridays at 6:30, and I'm off at 5, so I see when the sun comes up, and I get to see it start to go down. But it's so different compared to what I used to do.
It's like, well, quite literally, it's night and day. Like sometimes
Mhm.
you just see the difference in how people act during the day and during the night. It's sometimes very strange.
Yes, I agree.
So it's like, what sort of hobbies do you think are more common these days than when you were younger?
Um, I, you know, hobbies are funny like that. A lot of it just stays the same, and a lot of stuff changes, right? When
Hmm.
I was growing up, just to show my age, when I was growing up, Pokemon was literally just being invented. Trading card games, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh. I think Digimon had a trading card game at one point. All this stuff
Yeah, I
was
think it.
literally brand new. Um,
Hmm.
so seeing that become a hobby of kids collecting and seeing the Pokemon craze, seeing when the Game Boy was really hitting its stride in the early '90s. Um, that's my era. That's where I grew up. So I mean, video games are it's still a massive thing today, but the video games that are being played today are vastly different than what I played as a kid. I would play games like Super Mario World, and now today kids have Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch. The idea of having a fully 3D game in your hands that you could take with you on the go was unheard of when I
It
was a
was
kid.
almost mythical.
Yeah, exactly. Or it was just a fantasy, right? Fully 3D games in general like that looked almost realistic, that looked real to some degree. Um, that was an absolute science fiction fantasy. That was something that no one considered, no one thought about. When I was a kid, I mean, my hobbies was video games. You know, I collected Pokemon cards to a degree when I was a kid, more Yu-Gi-Oh, but like Magic the Gathering is still going on today, but it was in my mind it was much bigger back in the day,
Yeah.
and the people that really do play it a lot more now are the people that have been playing it since its inception, since the '90s. Um, Pokemon is and forever will be a kids game, but I come from the generation where that kids game first was developed. I collected what were they called? Pogs, Pogs, Pogs. I could not tell you how to play Pogs. I collected them. Didn't know what to do with them. They were little discs of cardboard that I think you're supposed to slam on the ground and they bounce and some stuff like that. I played board games as a kid. Candyland, the Game of Life, which I didn't understand at all as a kid. Same with Monopoly. Those are more geared towards adults and whatnot. Now they have Monopoly Junior and everything else. But I grew up playing chess and learning how to play like Go Fish with my friends.
Connection struggling a
Um,
little bit for some reason. Might be on my side.
and it's just interesting to see now the hobbies for kids today is like streaming, whether it's YouTube or
Hopefully.
TikTok, Kick, Twitch, whatever. Everyone's going live.
Hopefully it's really good.
Social media is the thing for kids today. I didn't have that growing up. I remember the time before the internet was like in everyone's house. If you had the internet in your house in the mid to early '90s, in some degree the late '90s, like your parents had money, right? YouTube was
Yeah.
not a thing when I was a kid. Uh, Twitch. No one thought of Twitch. No one thought about, oh, let's take these games. I'm going to play these games online for, potentially millions of people watching. No one thought about that. It just never occurred to them. You know, I was a kid. My whole thing was, playing with action figures, Power Rangers. I used to create my own little plays and put them on for my neighbors and whatnot. My friends, we played pretend, cops and robbers and everything else. And, that's what we did. And it's insane to see today.
Yeah, don't see as many kids do that. Usually, sometimes you might see if the parent gets a bit frustrated, they'll be like, "Yeah, I have an iPad."
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the good, iPad, iPod, all that stuff. I had the iPod Shuffle. Yeah, the iPod Shuffle. It was it wasn't like the stick, but it was, about yay big and yay wide. I have it around here somewhere in a box. But the idea of I could watch movies on my iPod Shuffle, or I had a friend that had an iPod Video, and he could watch full-length movies on his iPod, was insane. I had an iPod Touch at one point that could connect via Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, that's a whole other story. Wi-Fi was not a thing when I was a kid at all. No one even considered wireless gaming, wireless anything. You had to be plugged into a phone line. And if someone needed to use the phone while you're on the internet, well, that's too bad. You're going to have to get off the internet, aren't you?
Yeah, it's one or the other at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the old dial-up tone?
Oh, yeah. I can still hear it in my sleep.
It's odd how things have changed over time, because the kids of today will never not know things about the internet.
Mm-hmm. I've got some peers in an acting class I'm taking that are in the middle of scripting and producing a short film about a time. It's set in modern times, but it's as if the internet quit working, and seeing how some people react to that. You have two main characters in a particular scene. One is just in a park bench. They're in a park on a bench reading a book, and someone comes up and they have this backpack full of stuff, of photos they've taken that they would have put on Instagram or Snapchat, and they're just craving that someone will like their photos, and they sit there and they're trying to do selfies and whatnot, and the dynamic is insane. Because while it's meant to be played for laughs, I mean, looking at the reality of it, that's not too unrealistic. Because I know people, and I'm very positive you know people that live and breathe the internet. It is what they need in their lives. Without it, they wouldn't know what to do. This podcast right now is being recorded on the internet, which is wild to me. I'm speaking to someone that is literally tens of thousands of miles away from me, a different part of the world, thanks to the internet. And we wouldn't have that without this.
I was about to say, it literally connects to what you were saying. Like, there's countless situations where I'm like, imagine how different life would be without the internet. Like, I mean, all the folks in the Discords, the Discord itself, for example, everybody, the Discord is a good way that connects people. Obviously, everything has its downsides, but what I'm trying to get to is like all these people that we know through it, we probably wouldn't have known if it wasn't for it.
Correct, you're right. I mean, even the acting class I'm in, my acting teacher reached out to me on Instagram. Again, the internet brought someone into my life that I would never have met otherwise. Someone that I've seen in movies, that I vaguely recognize their work, that I would never have had a chance to meet if it had not been for the internet. And it's crazy to think about. That's what drives the world today. It's not just about how much money you have. It's not just about the opulence of your life. It's how many views do you have? How many followers do you have? How public of a figure are you? And to some people, that's all that matters, which is insane. We've had stuff like that for eons, celebrity and whatnot. But what is a celebrity today versus what is a celebrity 15 years ago?
Like, as much as I hate to reference it, but it's like you've more than likely heard of them because they have their own podcast now, that Hot Tour Girl or whatever they're called these days.
I was aware that she has a podcast. I never listened to it. I probably never will.
I haven't either, apart from when people have used clips from it to say how ridiculous it is.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they became famous from that, and then somebody gave them a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
is just ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That kind of fame is fleeting. And it's gonna sound mean, and if somehow they're watching this, I do apologize for what I'm about to say, but fame like that is very fleeting, and it's really just a flash in the pan. In 4 or 5 years, who's gonna remember who that is? Right? One of the original viral memes, the Cash Me Outside, how about that girl from over here in the US, she was on Dr. Phil. I hear about her once in a great while, and she tried to have a rap career for a while, and she got signed to a record label, and last I heard, she's not doing very well. Reality TV stars, the same thing. A lot of those people will cling on to the fact that they were on reality TV. That's what made them famous. People loved to hate them, or vice versa. It's very interesting to me to see how people will go viral, and see what they do with that. Mr. Beast is a good example. Mr. Beast didn't start his YouTube channel with the intent of becoming a multi-millionaire, almost a billionaire, and then now look at what's going on with Mr. Beast. Like, he's having such a dramatic downfall now.
Yeah, he was always one of those sort of people that you thought could do no wrong, but a lot of the stuff that he's caught up with isn't 100% to do with him, but is at the same time it's close enough where it will affect him in one way or another, which makes people question the whole idea of it.
Yeah, exactly. Another example of fleeting celebrity is Markiplier. It's keeping in the same line of YouTubers. Markiplier, people know who he is. He used to be a household name, and I think to a degree he still is, but not nearly as much. Same with PewDiePie or Filthy Frank, who he drops his Filthy Frank persona and goes on to have a relatively successful music career. There's people that are just fiends for the man's music because he actually creates really good stuff. But I don't think any of those guys really got into it necessarily to become famous. It's just fame finds them, right? And that's the idea of going viral. And that's what celebrity is now, which is crazy. The Hawk Tuah girl, I've seen people that talk about how she'll be irrelevant in the next 4 to 5 years. She got a podcast because people thought she was attractive. She said something outlandish, and it became a viral thing because she just said something super out of pocket. It doesn't take a whole lot to go viral. It takes luck. That's it. It's right place, right time, whether it's intentional or not. And same thing for being an actor like myself. The idea of getting discovered, is something that isn't really a thing anymore. You can, as my teacher says, you can go out and audition all day long, but some of those people out there, people see them on the internet, and that's what matters right now, right? People see you. What do they think of you? Public opinion is insane. I don't know how we got on this topic, but here we are.
Yeah, it sort of connects to it, but extent. But sometimes in some industries, it's like not what have you done, but what have you done lately. Sometimes they'll be like recency, all the sort of stuff that you've done recently can sometimes amount to, this happened to you, but you did this good thing. Like, sometimes it balances, but they're more bothered about what you can provide for them in that moment, I suppose.
Sure. And that's a lot of how entertainment works, is a lot of what have you done for me lately? Right? What have you done lately? Unless you are a household name in the entertainment world like Daniel Day-Lewis or Tom Hardy, Venom 3 just dropping this past week. Or who's another good one? Nicolas Cage. People know who Nicolas Cage is. Tom Hardy and whatnot. But that's because they've been doing this for so long. They become household names, right? So it doesn't matter what have you done for me lately. People are still going to talk about Nicolas Cage and Tom Hardy and Daniel Day-Lewis just because they've been doing stuff consistently. But those guys could stop working today, and folks are going to still remember who they are, right? versus the Haktua girl. And again, I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, so to speak, but outside of a viral 4 seconds that she had, what has she done? Right? What is she doing with that celebrity she has now? She has a podcast about what?
Yeah.
You know, COVID was massive for stuff like that. Everyone and their grandma, so to speak, had a podcast during COVID. I had a podcast, a couple of different ones at one point. I've been, I guess, on a couple of podcasts with mutual acquaintances. I'm trying to think who. Lazy IRL. I'm not entirely sure who he. I think Drake is in IWF. Am I correct?
Yeah.
He has a podcast that he does once in a great while called Top Shelf. That's where the idea of his Top Shelf bar came from. He started doing it called Top Shelf. I've been on that before. Kevin was going to have a podcast, and he still might. I've considered it before going back on it and just popping up on Twitch and seeing, here's a link, pop in if you want. We can just talk. Because I like the idea of doing radio. And for me, it's performance, right? But those have meaning. A show like this, having a roundtable discussion about literally whatever, you and I can just sit here and talk. People can choose to listen or not, but we have a point to it. So to vaguely entertain, what has the Haktua girl done to be entertaining? To say I'm an entertainer, to say, look at me, other than the fact that she's attractive, right? Get past the looks of it, and that's cool. There's millions of attractive people in the world, and I wish her all the success in the world. But she's gonna have to branch out beyond the base. She's got to learn to evolve.
Yeah, because in a very polite way, it was very coincidental that they were even questioned in the first place in the moment it happened, and they didn't go about the podcast themselves. They were pretty much given it. They didn't make it. They didn't as far as I'm aware, it was pretty much given to them. They didn't really do much on it.
Yeah. And again, there's so many different podcasts out there, for various things. There's podcasts later for everything out there, for everyone to find, whether it's superheroes, wrestling, video games, politics, movies, television, comic books. It all exists out there, right? When I did Top Shelf with Rick Xavier, it was an in/out of character podcast where I was playing my character, but as if you'd gone behind the curtain. Once the cameras are off, who am I really? Kind of thing. So it was still me, because that's all my characters really are, just extensions of who I am, just cranked up to 11, so to speak. But it's, again, the purpose being entertaining. You're just talking about wrestling in that instance, or video games or what have you, and that's something else that people don't realize sometimes, is that, again, it's purpose, right? The purpose of this podcast, to entertain people. You talk about something I've seen, you bring in people and you talk about wrestling or their lives or whatever, but again, you're getting to know somebody. There are people that eat that kind of stuff up,
Yeah, because people sometimes get intimidated, or not intimidated, but a bit put off when you say, "Oh, this is a wrestling podcast." But especially for the idea of these sort of episodes, and pretty much all of them, that's just the basis. That's just if someone went to you and said, "What pizza do you like?" and then you go, "Oh, I don't really like pizza," and then you go, "But there's other things there." They might do garlic bread, they might do pasta. That's that's my thought. I'm that's the idea of the podcast, but what else does it bring? It's to bring people in, to get them to talk about themselves, to get to talk with each other, because not everybody likes the same things, and I feel like this is a good way to get people to talk.
And it is. It's a straightforward kind of conversation, and that's something I've been saying for as long as I can remember. And millions of people have said the same thing. If we all liked the same stuff, the world would be boring.
Oh, definitely.
What makes us unique are our differences, our likes, our dislikes, what have you. You know, it just so happens that we're both wrestling fans. We're both we play video games, right? That's it. We're not too dissimilar in age. It's just crazy, And I don't know. You bring up the idea of saying like this is a wrestling podcast, and people have kind of weariness to it. It astounds me to this day that there's still some kind of stigma surrounding being a fan of professional wrestling. I have friends that have given me grief because I am an unabashed, unapologetic fan of pro wrestling ever since I was a child. I'm 33 now, and I still watch wrestling monthly. When I can, I watch AEW when I can. I watch clips of WWE, TNA, GCW, whatever, because that's what I grew up with. That's what I liked. Those larger than life characters like Sting or Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Diamond Dallas Page, Buff Bagwell, all those guys, Vampiro, all those guys. Those were larger than life characters that I saw that, and I was like, that's amazing. I want to be just like them. I went into a different path on the entertainment side of things, becoming an actor. At one point I wanted to be a wrestler. I honest to God, I told my mother, I was in tears, and she's like, what do you want from your life? And I was watching Raw, and I said, I want to do that. But I think it was more, not that I want to be a wrestler, so to speak. I wanted to be an entertainer. I've said to my own detriment, probably to a degree, give me a microphone, put me in the ring, and I can make people stop and listen. I don't have to be a wrestler. I could be a manager maybe, and because I like the psychological point of it. I like being able to make people feel. If people ask why I do what I do when I'm on stage or on film or doing voiceover, I like to make people feel. I like to make people be able to forget about the stuff going on in the world for a little. The mundane, or this, maybe they had a bad day. If I can take someone that had a bad day and I can make them smile with one of my performances, or laugh, or cringe, or just be able to forget for just a moment.
Just feel something, yeah.
Yeah, be able to get for just a moment that they've had a bad day. Then I've done my job. I don't do this because I want to be famous. That's something else entirely. If fame comes with it, and I kind of hope it does. I like it being financially stable, but again, I do it because I like to make people feel. I like to entertain. I like to help them remember it's okay to laugh. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset. Who was it? I want to say it was Randy Orton talked about when they were doing the documentary of like behind the character, whatever, just maybe a year or two ago. And he talked about how he gets into character and how he eats up the fact that like he goes out there and people are booing him and they're cheering and he's like, I love that. Bray Wyatt, one of the most creative people in entertainment in my mind in the last 20 years, may he rest in peace, was the same way. You went there to entertain people. Whether the Fiend was your cup of tea, to so speak, or not, whether Uncle Howdy is something that you enjoy watching or not. Point being, you're still talking about it, whether it's negatively or not. Whether you're like, just to use an example, and again, if he hears this, I'm sorry, but if you're like Jim Cornette and you go out and you just bash everything that's going on with modern wrestling because you don't like it, you're still talking about it.
Oh yeah,
right. It's still doing something for you. If someone goes out there, dressed up in a one-piece suit with a cheesy mask and a bad wig and calls themselves Uncle Howdy, people still talk about it. And God bless, Taylor Rotunda, Bo Dallas, for helping live on his brother's legacy. But like, again, there are people that love that kind of stuff. There are people that hate that kind of stuff. AEW, same thing. The stuff going on with John Moxley and Bryan Danielson and the plastic bag stuff. For me, I don't like that kind of stuff.
No, I wasn't over too keen on it. I was going to bring that up actually. Yeah,
it's just not for me, right? I still watch it. It made me feel something. It made me feel disgusted, and it made me almost turn off the broadcast. Same thing when you had Swerve Strickland and Adam Page, and they did when they stabbed him in the jaw with the needle spot. Like, I was like, you don't need to do that. I'll agree with Jim Cornette on that. You know, and a lot of the wrestling industry, you don't need to do that. But again, it ain't for me, right? There are other people that enjoy that kind of stuff because in the end, those guys are professionals. You know, it's their choice to make. No one's going to force them to go out and do that kind of stuff, right? Especially whether it's a syringe in the cheek or a bag over the head. You know, people want to pick it apart. Oh, we can bite a hole in the bag and you breathe. That's great. It still looks like they suffocated a man twice on television. Like, it's still, and people are talking about it still. I'm talking about it, right? And the original spot happened like a month and a half ago. And I'm still talking about it because it made me feel something. Right? People watching John Moxley going, what the hell is he doing? You know, this doesn't make any sense. They're still talking about it. They're going to keep watching because they want to know where this is going, either to watch it fail spectacularly or to watch it succeed. WWE, same thing with the Bloodline. For me, the Bloodline dragged on way too long. Roman Reigns, 4 years as champion. That to me is absolutely mental. But there were times where I was watching some of those pay-per-views and I was like, this person is this close to winning. And I felt cheated because they didn't win. They kept me going.
I was the same.
When Claudio Castagnoli, Cesaro, whatever you want to call him, when he faced Roman Reigns in one of his last WWE matches for the title, I'm literally the head of a pin was where his shoulder was to the mat. Kick out at 2, spear, guillotine, whatever, and he loses. I thought he was going to win. You know, to me, that's entertaining, right? And there are people that hate that kind of stuff. CM Punk's a good example, too. I am unabashedly a CM Punk fan. I know plenty of people that we both associate with that don't like CM Punk. And I don't like everything he does, right? But I'm entertained by him. So I'm going to watch what he's doing, wherever he's at. I was waiting for them to swerve us all, so to speak, and to have CM Punk return to AEW. He never did. You know, to the detriment, I think, of the company. I still like me some AEW, but I think there's 1,000 things he could have done better in that situation. You know, I don't think it's as bad as people say it is. But I also don't think that, like, WWE is the end-all be-all. A lot of people do. For a lot of people, even in that industry, you don't make it unless you go to WWE. That's their end goal, whether in AEW or Japan or wherever. You know, but I'm also of the mind that the more wrestling on television, the more options you have, the better the industry is as a whole. And that's just me as a fan.
Well, it's like, I think something came up recently that I think TNA were going to induct AJ Styles into the Hall of Fame, and WWE were like, they didn't want him to, they'd like it all.
Yeah, they declined for him, which is insane to me. AJ Styles literally was there day one in TNA, but a lot of people don't know that AJ Styles was originally in WCW, then went to WWE on one of their B shows. It was either Velocity or Heat or something like that for 1 or 2 matches, and then went to TNA and became, at the time, in the early to mid 2000s, he was almost a household name when it came to wrestling. He was as big as Kurt Angle in the heyday of the original TNA run.
He was like definitely one of those wrestlers that once you think of TNA, that's like one of the first wrestlers that you think of.
It's like him, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Frankie Kazarian. Kurt Angle actually had a longer run in TNA than he did in WWE. He was in TNA for 10 years. 10 years straight. And then people remember him from his WWE days. Why? Because it was just a bigger product. You know, and they presented him differently. Who's another one that went to start off in TNA? Lance Archer. If people are aware of Lance Archer, he started off in TNA as Lance Hoyt. Again, who else? The Motor City Machine Guns, the best example I can give right now. They built TNA. The tag team division of TNA would not be where it is today if the Motor City Machine Guns had not built that from the ground up like they did. Guys like Sanjay Dutt started TNA. Like I said, Frankie Kazarian, Abyss, who's now a producer over in WWE. Jeremy Borash is a TNA original. He's a producer in WWE. He was an Oscar personality. Started off as one of the ring announcers, became commentary and interviewer and everything else. Who else? I'm trying to think of who else that's really prominent today was in TNA. MVP was in TNA for a while. Bobby Lashley actually had almost a bigger run in TNA because he was more in his prime, I think, than he was in WWE. He started in WWE, left, became an MMA fighter while he was in TNA, stayed in TNA, was a multi-time champion, and then went back to WWE. Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway, is a former TNA world champion. Rikishi was in TNA. Christian Cage, easily one of the most iconic TNA signings of all time. And Ken Shamrock, another great one, who was big in the Attitude Era, was in TNA for a long time. He went to the TNA Hall of Fame a couple years ago. And oddly enough, he was inducted by The Rock, of all people, in the TNA Hall of Fame. That should tell you a lot about the state of wrestling these days. In fact, that WWE told AJ Styles, no, you can't. That drives me. That makes no sense to me. But I don't know. I think there's more to that story, though.
There must be, because they still have a sort of working relationship with TNA.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least they did.
As far as I know, they still do. Joe Hendry appears on NXT once in a while. You have the Royal Rumble coming up in a few months, and there's hints that Joe Hendry is gonna be in the Rumble, and that he might. I doubt it, but they're saying rumors are he might win the Royal Rumble. I highly doubt that, but the fact of the matter is, they have a working relationship. Joe Hendry comes over. Jordan Grace was in last year's Women's Royal Rumble. No one saw that coming. And that's saying a lot, considering that Mickie James went into the Royal Rumble more as an apology to her, but with her TNA gimmick and walking out with the Knockouts title and her theme music and everything else. And she's only in it for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, but it's a moment that people that saw it are not going to easily forget, because her gimmick in TNA is so much different than her gimmick in WWE. Right, her gimmick is kind of poppy in WWE, and she's kind of crazy, whatever. And then you have her TNA gimmick of hardcore country, and it's more of that, a southern badass woman. That's her whole shtick, right? She recorded her own theme music, everything else. It's such a different presentation. But again, that comes from them working with TNA. I just wish that they would. I wish they would allow more intermingling of companies with other people, because I think, honestly, a relationship between WWE and AEW could absolutely be fantastic if they were allowed to work together. Watching someone like, I'm trying to think of something good here, like Darby Allin against someone like Trick Williams, I'd watch that. That'd be insane.
Yeah, definitely.
And the collective internet would have its mind blown. They wouldn't know what to do. There'd still be unfortunate tribalism out there, but people wouldn't know what to do in that instance. You have someone like Christian Cage showing up in WWE, because according to Christian Cage is different than his character in WWE. So watching the patriarch of Christian Cage show up in a place like WWE with that same mentality, let's just say to go to NXT, for the sake of argument, to haunt someone like Lexis King, whose father is the late Brian Pillman, to continue that, you thought you could change your name, but you'll never be rid of me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd watch that. That'd be great. To see someone like Roman Reigns, who's the tribal chief, what that whole thing. Let's say he's standing tall, and then you have not Dean Ambrose, but Jon Moxley show up in WWE in this whatever form he's in right now. It would be insane to watch that happen, right?
I mean, yeah, especially if it's not just him. I imagine if he has like Pac, you've got
Wheeler.
Claudio, Wheeler, yeah.
Yeah. Marina Shafir, like you have all these people that can genuinely like actually beat you down. It'd be crazy to watch, or whatever we can do to make Chris Jericho retire. I mean, that also works for me, but
yeah,
it
almost feels a bit sad that he's still doing it in an extent.
He's doing what he can. I can see what they're trying to do in that by going over in certain aspects, like people hate him even more. Like he just became a 9-time champion with his second Ring of Honor world title, right? People absolutely loathe the fact that he beat Mark Briscoe for that title. But here's the thing, right? Here's the question. Mark Briscoe is the ROH world champion. How do you justify, outside of the fact that, like, it's sad that Jay Briscoe is no longer with us, may he rest in peace, but like, someone had to beat him for the title at some point.
Yeah.
So why not make it somebody that the fan base already despises? Why not?
Especially
make
how he won as well.
Exactly. I never saw the match, but I heard about it, and I know that it was done in a kayfabe, very controversial way, right? But again, who are you going to have beat Mark Briscoe for that title that people aren't going to accept? Because what's going to happen now, either Mark Briscoe gets his championship back in dramatic fashion, or, someone else steps up. But even then, they kind of hit themselves into a corner because, if Mark Briscoe's not the one to beat Chris Jericho, who will? Are the fans going to accept that? Same thing with, the Young Bucks and the tag team titles, right? I understand why they became tag team champions. I get it. They have this new era, the EVPs and everything else. I get that. Because no other tag teams have really been built, unfortunately. And the ones that have been built are not showcased very well. I think they're building something big with Private Party to eventually become the next tag team champions.
I definitely think that the issue with how that match went is that you could almost argue they buried them in a way that didn't look too great to an extent.
I don't know if they got buried, because they still had it was an entertaining match. I believe the phrase buried is thrown around way too much.
I think what I more mean is the way the Young Bucks worded what they said, and then with the fact that how you had like Amazing Red show up and like was talking to the Private Party beforehand. It all was building up for them to potentially, more than likely, in your mind at least, win. Like everything, but then you have Young Bucks say what they said. That I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like,
they'll never be more than a mid-card tag team.
Yeah,
and let me ask you something. Did it make you hate the Young Bucks more?
I didn't really change anything for me.
Really?
Yeah,
I think that's what they're going for. Is like they're trying to make people despise them more. So when they eventually do lose, it's going to be a big moment of catharsis.
I can definitely see that. I think the more thing I'm seeing it as is that it may be just confused on the idea of it. Apart from the fact that obviously, yes, it's more to get more heat on them to make people despise them. But it just made me think it just looks a little bit silly the way it was built up for them to win. But maybe that's the idea of that you're most supposed to think, oh, this was their moment and it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen. Exactly. And I could see where that'd be an issue. I think the issue that AEW has with the booking personally, and this is just me as a fan, I'm not a professional anyway. I'm not going to try to armchair book. I think they build things up too quickly. in certain aspects. I think you give Private Party a shot at the pay-per-view, have them lose, almost make it a squash. Like the EVPs are abusing their power, right? It's rampant, right? They're EVPs. They're not the owners, they're not the CEO. They're not Tony Khan. Then you do what you should do is you use Tony Khan sparingly because he's not an on-screen personality. There's just no way around it. I love the enthusiasm he has, the energy he brings sometimes. I've been to an AEW show live where they did like Collision and Dark and everything else in Rampage. And Tony Khan brings a lot of really good energy, a lot of over-the-top, high energy stuff. But the problem is you have someone like, someone like Vince McMahon is the best analog I can make because Vince McMahon grew up around wrestling, right? His dad and everything else. So he understands the business side of it. He also understands that you've got to be a performer. No one's looking at Tony Khan as an Oscar award-winning actor. Just like no one really was looking at Vince as an award-winning actor, but people love to hate Vince. Even before all the accusations and everything else, the stuff he was doing, like it was gross behavior, would not fly today. People love to hate that kind of stuff, and for good reason. It takes everybody, every fan, and makes them get behind the one thing. We don't like Vince. We don't want to see him lose, right? No one's chanting for Tony to come out. But if you have the EVPs, they're abusing their authority, and finally, should Tony decide to take some acting classes and get better at that side of things? So I think he's a great businessman. He's got football and soccer in his blood, and his dad and whatever. Say what you want about how he got his money, but obviously he's successful at being some kind of businessman if he's able to have multiple sports teams and a successful professional wrestling company. He seems to learn the entertainment side of it, right? And we can also say all day long that Tony's the booker, and we don't know. And that's something I've tried to really not push on people, but I've tried to make that well known as my opinion. We don't know what happens behind the scenes. But you take the idea of in character people abusing their power, and then finally Tony Khan has had enough. And he comes out, he's not super high energy, he's not like nervous wreck, ADHD, batshit crazy bonkers. He's serious. He's he doesn't have a very commanding voice, but I guarantee you he can have a commanding presence if he tried. He comes out and he's like, I've had enough of this. And then he kayfabe demotes or fires the Young Bucks as EVPs, right? After he's like, not only is this, I'm stripping you of the titles, and the people are just like, cool. It's not going to satisfy everybody, but then you hold either a tournament or you do, some kind of match to determine the next contenders for the title, and you do that, or you do something like, the Young Bucks are out abusing their power, and Tony Khan comes out and he's like, I've had enough. He's like, this can't continue, and he recognizes the fact that they hurt him, right? He's like, I can't put hands against you. You guys have already shown that you're physically stronger than me, and you have all these people. He's like, but I know someone that can. Someone that can stand up to you, and then Kenny Omega's music hits. Have him make that return. People lose their minds. Now here's the problem you have. It's 4-on-1. Who Kenny brings with him, I don't know, right? It could be Kota Ibushi, even though, I'm sure his wrestling days are almost behind him at this point. But you get almost a 4-on-4 thing of the Elite versus, Kenny and the originals, whatever. You build it up like that, and then you take the Young Bucks out that way. You take down the Elite. Because you need a group that's going to stand together that people are going to care about. And you have too many factions that are heels. You have the Elite, you have the BCC, the Patriarchy.
I suppose the House of Black kind of is heel.
Kind of. They're as close to neutral as you're going to get, but they lean towards more being heel. The Don Callis family, way too many. There's too many heels.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in EFED. Also, EFED and SimFed. Too many people that want to be heels, and it puts everything off balance. Right? You need a good mix of the two. Again, I don't know who that would be. I don't know who Kenny Omega would bring out. Rumor has it Kenny Omega and Hiroshi Tanahashi are going to take on the Young Bucks at either Wrestle Kingdom or something next year, and that's going to be Kenny's first match back and Tanahashi's final match.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be cool, But again, you need to have someone that's going to be on equal footing with the Bucks, right? You need to have that moment. I don't know who that would be. I don't know who you can build up right now. Maybe it's Kenny, Darby, Danielson, and Swerve, something like that. But again, Swerve's got his own stuff going with Shelton Benjamin, who's been presented as a freaking monster. Absolute. He is a killer in AEW right now. Like this is a version of Shelton Benjamin we haven't seen since I was in like junior high or high school. The way he physically dismantled Lio Rush is insane. And the thing is, Shelton Benjamin's probably 6'4", 6'3". He's a big guy, but he's not the biggest guy. But being able to use his athleticism, his collegiate background, his aggression, it was amazing. And you have someone like Lio Rush who can sell almost as good as someone like Nick Nemeth, who in my mind is the end all be all of people that will sell for anybody. You could have just a light tap on the chin for Nick Nemeth, and he'll make it look like you shattered his jaw. The man is amazing at what he does. But yeah, so going back, that you have to have something that's going to counter the Young Bucks, and there's nothing in place that can do that right now. Just like you have the Bloodline versus the new Bloodline in WWE, we can all see where this is going. Eventually, the old beats the new, and and then hopefully we see Guerrillas of Destiny kind of go and do their stuff in the tag division. Maybe Tonga Lioa learns how to wrestle. I don't know. I'm not a wrestler. I'm not an athlete. I'm just an actor. I'm just a fan. But I find nothing about Tonga Lioa entertaining. Jacob Fatu, on the other hand, they could absolutely, if they wanted to, build him up without a whole lot of effort, build him up to be something fantastic using his real life issues. Like Jacob Fatu is a genuine felon in the US, and he can't go to certain places in the world because of that. Like he can't go over, I don't think he can go to the UK or Canada for that matter because he's a felon. So the whole thing is like, you build that up. He's too dangerous to leave the US. He was already an absolute maniac savage in the indie circuit, MLW and everything else. So build that up. Make him uncontrollable. Make it so that Solo regrets ever bringing Jacob Fatu into the mix. He's the one that's going to turn on Solo, I think, is going to be Jacob Fatu, because he's the most devout, member of the new bloodline. Kind of like how Buddy Matthews was for Seth Rollins when he was the Messiah, and then that was his disciple Murphy. Like, it's the same idea, except Jacob Fatu can genuinely rip your head off.
I would say I think there was a few rumors or some people speculating that maybe Doreen are worried that you got somebody like Jacob Fatu that might overshine their creation that is Solo Sikoa.
Because I hate to say it, but I've never, even with Solo being where he is now, I've never cared about Solo Sikoa as a fan. Much like for a long time, I did not care about Roman Reigns as a fan. There are certain people that have that built-in charisma, right? Jacob Fatu is one of those people that has that innate, born and bred charisma. He doesn't have to be a babyface either. He is an absolute natural heel. He's a monster. And the fact that he's half the size, body-wise, of what he used to be means he can be presented as someone that is twice as dangerous because he's twice as fast, twice as strong, right? Tomatonga is another one that has buckets of charisma. If you give him the mic and you actually let him do a promo, as long as he can remember not to have the hand permanently on the censor button, because in Japan he didn't have to censor himself. If he can remember just to keep it relatively clean in his word choice, he is a fantastic promo, right? Solo Sikoa, how was it? He promoted against John Cena the first time he ever did a promo on live TV, and he just failed so hard. But when Cena called him, he's like, I have half a voice. I can do this better with half a voice and cook you in 90 seconds than you can ever do. And he does it, you know. Then you're also talking about putting someone that was relatively new to the game against someone who is arguably one of the best ever to be on a microphone, right? So, I don't know. I think Roman eventually got it. The Usos got it. Jacob Batu's got it. Tama Tonga's got it. Solo is a bad ripoff of Roman Reigns in my mind. And Tonga Leo is boring.
Definitely feels that way. It's difficult in some respects because you'll have the diehard fans of how they were or how they could be, and then you've got the whole idea of, well, where did they go from here without it shitting on to find a better perspective on one person or the other. Because like I say, there is the general concern that Solo Sikoa might just not have a direction once the bloodline stuff's over with. Like, what does he do? Like, who is he really without the bloodline?
Oh, exactly. Here's the thing. Solo Sikoa needs someone like Paul Heyman. The reason Solo was getting over so well is because Paul Heyman was in the mix. Paul Heyman is one of those people that I've said for years I would love to have a conversation with. Not about wrestling. Not at all. About writing. I would love to talk to him about how he creates characters and how he produces. That kind of stuff. Wrestling is I wouldn't say wrestling it's a given. But it's the fact that Paul Heyman is one of the most creative minds, not just in wrestling, but in entertainment. He's able to take a fledgling Eastern Championship Wrestling back in the 90s and turn it into the ECW that everyone remembers, Extreme Championship Wrestling. Just a small New York-based promotion that went head-to-head with WWE and almost came out on top, but they ran out of money. That's it. They ran out of cash. Yeah. They were going head-to-head against them in the Attitude Era, and a lot of times they were winning. People were talking about just as much about the Sandman, Rhino, and Tommy Dreamer as they were about Bret Hart, Triple H, and DX. Right? The difference is back then you also had the goofiness that was the late years of WCW. But Solo Sikoa needs someone like Paul Heyman. Now, if it were up to me, obviously it's not, I would find a way to convince Jim Cornette to come back to wrestling to manage someone like Solo Sikoa, to manage Solo Sikoa in general. Because people love to hate Jim Cornette. They will sit there and like be haters while listening to Jim Cornette's podcasts. I would know because I'm one of them. There's some stuff that I just want to say, okay, I'll watch on TV and I'll enjoy it, but I'm like, old man Cornette is going to have an aneurysm and I want to hear him lose his mind. So I will go and seek out some of those clips. But there's some stuff that Jim Cornette does get right about wrestling, right? For him, it's about the story, about selling. A lot of wrestlers today aren't telling stories. If they are, it's short stories. We need some more long-term stuff. Jake Roberts is a good example. Jake Roberts is one person that if he was allowed to manage Lance Archer, like I think he could, Lance Archer would have been an absolute beast. Because Jake Roberts is one of the best minds in wrestling now, especially now he's clean and sober. You know, he's forgotten more about wrestling than most people will ever know. Same with Jim Cornette, Paul Heyman. You know, of all the modern day figures of wrestling, like those three are on my Mount Rushmore, so to speak, without any question. Is Heyman, Jake Roberts, and Cornette, because there will never anyone like them again, and there hasn't been anyone like them since. If Paul Bearer was still around, same thing. Paul Bearer is up there with one of the greatest creation minds in wrestling history. Brother Love, Bruce Pritchard, same thing. Eric Bischoff was a very creative person. Eric Bischoff has gone on record saying, people accuse him of bringing back NWO and TNA and everything else. And he's like, I wasn't there to work with TNA. I was there to manage Hulk Hogan's career. And when he was in TNA, he did just that. He was always working with Hogan and Sting, whatever, but they were making stories that people were watching, that people were invested in. Whether you loved or hated the Joker Sting stuff, people, when Sting brought out Joker Sting 1 or 2 more times in AEW, people like me were losing their minds. Because it's entertainment and it's fun. But that was a creation of Eric Bischoff. You need more storytellers. You don't need a team of 30 writers. Guys like Abyss. Like Abyss produced the Hell in a Cell match between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, which I haven't seen yet. And I'll get around to watching it at some point because I've heard it's one of the best Hell in a Cell matches of all time. Abyss produced that. You have wrestlers producing matches because they know what they're doing. Guys like Bobby Roode, Abyss, Petey Williams. Petey Williams should absolutely be given full reign to produce a new cruiserweight division in WWE because he's an X division icon.
It's crazy. Like, I do have an interesting question for you though.
Do so.
If because it also connects to Paul Heyman stuff. What's your opinion on this? Because you might have heard of it. Would you have, if you had the power to, during the whole Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan stuff, if you could have got rid of majority of, if not all of the legends from TNA and made it more of a youngster promotion, would you have done that?
No. I would not. And I'll tell you why, right? You need those names. You need people that are going to draw, right? I don't care who you are. If someone says Ric Flair is going to be on a show, there's a good chance people that either haven't watched wrestling for a long time or vaguely know wrestling are going to tune and see what's going on. Same thing with Hulk Hogan. Those names are always going to draw. Eric Bischoff is a household name for wrestling fans. Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, household names for media. Right? If you had someone, just for the sake of argument, tell me that tomorrow AEW is going to have a segment with Vince McMahon, I guarantee you people are going to tune into that. You need people that are going to bring in an audience. Okay? And that's not to say that new talent can't bring in an audience, but you need someone to bring them to the party, so to speak. And at that point, once you have your audience, you need to do something with it. You need to wow them. If it's just new talent, no one's going to care. That's why AEW, in its inception, you had Chris Jericho, right? Chris Jericho is a household name for entertainment, especially for wrestling fans. People want to see, what in the hell is Chris Jericho doing over here? He was doing some interesting stuff in Japan. Not his greatest work, but still interesting stuff in Japan that got people watching, right? No one in America really knew who the Young Bucks were unless they were watching Ring of Honor specifically, or Kenny Omega, Private Party. Who the hell's Private Party? Right? Darby Allin, never heard of him. Without WWE, Bryan Danielson wouldn't have been as big a star as he is today. Right? If you take a new promotion, brand spanking new, and you say, one of our first biggest signings exclusively is Bryan Danielson, people are going to go watch that because now they're going to be curious. Right? Even if he doesn't wrestle, if he's on commentary, he's a general manager again. People are going to see what's going on. They want to know. Mick Foley brings in people to watch. Hulk Hogan, for better or worse, brings in people to watch. Eric Bischoff, Ric Flair. You take people that we know, and you're going to do better. That's why Lucha Underground did so well, right? They were bringing in people like Rey Mysterio at one point, was in Lucha Underground for one season of the show. Vampiro, legendary wrestler, was not allowed on American television for a long time because of how violent, how crazy his matches were. But people know the name. Hardcore wrestling gets no Vampiro, so now they're going to go watch this show, right? Matt Striker, WWE fans of a certain age know who Matt Striker is. He's on commentary. They're going to go watch this show, and it brings in people. but you need those people to plant the seeds. That's why, to a degree, I understand why people are upset that you have, ex WWE guys going to AEW, right? I've seen the memes, all WWE, wrestling, all ex WWE, whatever. You need those people. WWE's created a platform. They, for 30 years, had a monopoly, more or less, on wrestling. So how do you get people to change the channel? You take names that they know and you bring them over. That's why someone like Chris Jericho, who owns the name, the trademark of Chris Jericho, can go to AEW or Ring of Honor or New Japan, and people are going to watch. Because like, oh man, I loved watching Chris Jericho as a kid. What's he doing now? Jake Roberts I don't care anyone says, Jake Roberts and Arn Anderson were fantastic signings for AEW. Only because you're going to bring in the old school wrestling fans.
Yeah.
No one expected Jake Roberts to come out and promo on Cody at all. No one expected Jake Roberts to come out, despite being in his late 60s, early 70s, looking like someone's grandfather, but at the same time, giving a better promo than anyone in wrestling had done at that time, showing he still got it. Arn Anderson coming out and doing his, infamous, I'm going to pull out the Glock and spread brains across the pavement thing. No one expected that, but people were talking about it and still talk about it today. People go back and watch old AEW because of that. Because it's names that they know. They're creating headlines, And then at the same time, you want to bring in, fans from outside the U.S. So a lot of wrestlers in AEW were in New Japan. The Young Bucks with the Bullet Club, right? The Bullet Club brand, while might be specifically for New Japan now, right? You have names like Jay White with Bullet Club Gold, where they were just the Bang Bang Gang. People like Jay White. People are going to watch Jay White, right? Joe Hendry, great. He's the king of the meme for wrestling these days. At least was for a long time. His song got to number 4 on the worldwide music charts because of his viral marketing. People were watching NXT now because they want to see Joe Hendry. Now they're going to watch TNA because they saw what Joe Hendry can do. Now they're going to watch TNA because who from WWE is going to show up in TNA? Right? Same thing with New Japan. Who in New Japan is going to show up in AEW and vice versa?
It's all about having a way for it to mutually benefit each other. Like, competition is, at least how I think vast majority of people probably view it, is always a good thing.
Yes.
Having a monopoly on all wrestlers may be all good and everything, but at the end of the day, like, your roster will be oversaturated.
Yes, and that is an issue, right? At one point, AEW had like 100 and something people on its roster. Here's the thing, right? Was it oversaturated? Yes. Okay. I am a day one AEW fan. But they also brought in a lot of indie guys and everything else. Here's the thing. You didn't see a lot of new names being signed to WWE during the time of COVID, right? Versus AEW, you had indie guys that a lot of people might not have ever heard of. Warhorse is a good example, right? Had a match against Cody Rhodes on Dynamite for the TNT Championship, right? It was a one-off thing. Tony Khan kept him on payroll for a while. God bless Tony Khan for, paying all these people. If he's got the money, it's his money to do with as he wishes. He wants to pay these people to keep wrestling alive in his mind so these people can still work. Cool, right? I think that WWE suffers from that to a degree too, because you have the same people doing stuff on TV all the time. Yeah. There's never going to be a right answer for that. I think AEW had too many people on their roster? 100% yes. Do I think AEW is a bit of a mess? Yes. But again, AEW, and this is not meant to be AEW versus WWE, but AEW is like the kind of wrestling that I like to watch. Right? It's more of that grounded indie style. It's not super crazy like sports entertainment. Let's have these weird, altered reality 3D graphics on screen that look uncanny valley that creep me out kind of stuff. Shout out to the big time Bex, graphic that I hated. I absolutely despise that thing. It creeped me out from day one. But the problem is, you have wrestlers in the industry and I have friends that have been in that industry that I've talked to about this. The goal is to get on TV, right? So you can make 6 figures if possible, or at least make enough to pay your bills, be financially stable, and live your dreams. And no one should, you can't falter anyone for wanting to live out their dreams. And if Tony Khan wants to pay someone to sit at home, that's his decision to make. You don't have to like it, but at the same time, he was giving people jobs. He was giving people opportunities. We see a guy like Warhorse go on TV, and I think with a crowd, he could have done really well because the AEW crowd is more indie-centered, right? Brody Lee's another good example of someone that could have benefited from a crowd. We didn't get really much of one because, unfortunately, he passed away maybe a year or two after he started with AEW. Matt Hardy, same thing. When they reintroduced Broken Matt Hardy, would have been way better with a crowd. A crowd would have absolutely built that up better, right? But again, these guys got a chance to go out, to be on TV, to do what they wanted to do and live their dream, and you can't fault them for that. I also think that we don't need to have an announcement every single time a wrestler's let go from a company. I don't think it's anyone's business but the people involved. I cannot stand dirt sheets. I cannot stand the wrestling and the internet wrestling community half the time because they're so proud to figure out what's going on behind the scenes that they take the fun out of it. Yeah,
it's like when people go, such and such event, this guy's gonna be there, and all this. Like, sure, this takes away the surprise, the mystique, the whole build up. It's a well and good being excited when this guy goes or this guy returns, but it's like, just let it happen, man. The joy of it just goes when all this
Exactly. I think the best current examples of just letting organic reactions happen, right? A lot of it is in AEW right now because I think when they originally debuted Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson in the same night, no one saw that coming at all. No one thought that was going to happen. You can ask around in the SCW and probably in the server too. Anyone that was sitting there watching the show when I was watching it with them in Discord. I lost my mind when Adam Cole's music hit. For me, that was a big deal. But then for Bryan Danielson to come out, I absolutely was losing it because no one expected that. No one saw that coming. And then you have this last pay-per-view for AEW. What was it? What did we just watch? Wrestle Dream. You had the return of MJF. No one saw that coming. And then the return of Adam Cole, which no one saw coming. Right? When Edge returned to the Royal Rumble, no one saw it coming. When Nigel McGuinness,
no one saw that.
When Nigel McGuinness hit the ring at All In, especially at Wembley, no one saw that coming.
Oh, definitely not.
And that allows people to organically react. When Joe Hendry went to NXT, it was out of nowhere, right? Now, if it had been me booking that, I would have waited for something bigger like the Royal Rumble. You get an arena full of people and you play that music, people are going to lose their minds. You don't say anything about it. Jim Cornette talks about it, actually, when he talks about, how can I love you if you don't go away? Or how can I miss you if you don't go away? Someone like Claudio going from WWE to AEW, it would have been like 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 months since anyone had seen him wrestling. He went away for a while. Then he comes back to wrestling in AEW and the crowd loses it. Same with MJF. No one had heard it from MJF since Daniel Garcia spiked him on his neck. It was just gone. He wasn't really tweeting anything. He walked away from social media. No one's talking. And then he showed up and people lost it. Adam Cole went away. Undisputed Kingdom, is somehow face now. That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
But no way, right? He goes away. He comes back and they give him a reason why. It's not a great reason, but at the same time, you just find better that Adam Cole works better as a face than a heel, and you find MJF works better as a heel than a face. We'll never get a resolution to this whole, the devil story. And while to a degree that's unfortunate, if they can make it mean something, I'm okay with it. But you need to make something out of the Undisputed Kingdom or break them up. Break them up.
I almost feel like this is one of the things I thought of when it came to them. I was like, do they have them turn on Cole to have MJF beat them? Do they have Wardlow rejoin MJF? Like, there's all these pieces that could happen. But it's like, as long as it's entertaining, I won't lie, that's what I'm more bothered about at the end of the day.
Yeah, just entertain me. You know, again, the stories don't have to be, Oscar award-winning stuff. It'll never happen. It's like the thing I pitched from a Twitter post a couple days ago in the SCW Discord. Adam Cole had to have a cadaver bone put into his foot to get a recovery. Just as a joke, like what happens that the person that bone is from was not a good person, and then he starts like super kicking all the faces without meaning to, and now they have to like do an exorcism on his ankle. I'd watch that. Just be like, what is he doing? And he's like, I'm not meaning to. It could be good, right? It would be cheesy, yes. Would it be kind of funny? Yes. But it would be entertaining to me, I don't mind the silliness of it all. Of course, wrestling, for all intents and purposes, is silly.
Yeah.
We literally, one of the biggest names in wrestling was an undead Western mortician that was going around that became a biker for no reason, then was buried alive and came back as a zombie, and then went back to being a biker for no reason. No, they never explained any of it. And, that's okay. Or the fact that you have, you're telling me that, the brother of the undead Western mortician, the devil's favorite demon, survived a house fire, was all burned up. Oh no, the scars are just emotional scars. He's just crazy and evil. Okay, fine. I can buy that. Now he's the mayor of a town in Tennessee here in the U.S. Okay, fine. Why not? He's not a wrestler anymore, but he comes back as a wrestler once in a while. They don't bother to explain any of it. Wrestling is silly.
Yeah.
All right. When I'm trying to think, Doink the Clown, great, terrifying, scared kids left, right, and center. Wrestling is silly, and that's okay. Wrestling doesn't have to be serious all the time.
Yeah, like the battle royal they had at WrestleMania 17, we had all those different gimmicks in it, like the Repo Man, the Duke the Dumpster, and all this. It's like it literally personified how ridiculous wrestling can be and is.
Exactly. Or you have these moments in like the Royal Rumble where a good example, you had Jimmy Snuka and Roddy Piper at like WrestleMania 23, at Royal Rumble like 2018 or 2014, right? And they're just standing up, and neither of these two men have any business being in a ring again. You can tell they're out of shape, they're old. Jimmy Snuka looks like he's just had a stroke. Like, it's not good. But it's silly, and people watch it. You know why? Because it's two old men that are going to start throwing hands. I'm going to watch that. Go back and watch the footage, and you have CM Punk's literally against the middle rope laughing because it's hilarious, because it's ridiculous. Mick Foley talking with the sock puppet. That was his gimmick. That was it. Like, he went from being like in the boiler room to, still having the leather mask that no one really explained. And then one day he shows up and just sweats in a button-up shirt with a sock on his hand. Okay. There was literally a leprechaun under the ring that was Vince McMahon's illegitimate child. Wrestling is silly. Let it be silly. Let some people be serious about it. Present some people as being serious. But let there be characters. Let it be a little fun. Because that's what it's meant to be. Wrestling is meant to be fun. Danhausen is a great personification of when wrestling can be fun. He's ridiculous. He has a serious side. He can be a heel. He can be scary. Right? When he's got blood dripping down his face and he has the spike and everything else. When they presented Very Evil Danhausen one time, a couple years ago, I was losing my mind because I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. He was a force because Donovan Danhausen is a great wrestler, but he recognizes that wrestling is silly. So he carries around a jar of candy teeth with him and puts them in his opponent's mouth and hits him in the face. Why? Because the teeth are already in someone's mouth, so they're not a weapon. Wrestling is silly, and that's okay. Cody has a giant tattoo of his logo on his neck.
Oh man, I still remember when that happened. And there were fans doing the same thing. They were like,
I've
"Oh
seen
yeah, I've
it.
got the same tattoo."
And he's like, why? Why? Like, it's cool, good for you, but why? You know? I would never when I was a kid, the Undertaker had his wife's name tattooed across his throat. I'd never go to a fucking tattoo artist and get the name Sarah tattooed across my throat. I have the same tattoo as you. Why?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? It means nothing. That's why it just drives me up a wall when people take wrestling way too seriously.
It's like when you have these rabid fans that approach them while they're getting off planes and stuff, and they take it to the extreme where it's like you have like wrestling fans like you and me where we feel like not uneasy, but we feel almost guilty wanting to approach these people because we know how rabid some other fans get.
Mm-hmm. I think the nicest person I've ever met in wrestling was Kane. He is a very quiet human being. This was before he was in politics, anything like that. He was surrounded by fans. I said hi to him. He was wearing glasses. He was just a very quiet, very nice man, right? He was cool. John Moxley gets out of a tour bus and he just accepts the fact that there's throngs of people. He's just like, yes, my people. Like, he's okay with that, right? Nick Nemeth, same thing. He accepts that my people. These people that made me, who I am today. But again, I've been fortunate enough to have jobs in the past where I had a chance to work with celebrities, right, in various capacities. I had a job where a local U.S. football team in the Seattle area, they were investors in a company I worked for. So I had a chance to meet these people. Now, the benefit is I'm not a massive fan of American football. I watch it on, the Super Bowl and stuff like that. Same with UK football, soccer, whatever you want to say. I've been to games. I prefer to go and see it live. But what I learned is if you treat these people like regular folks, like regular people like you and me, 9 times out of 10, they're very appreciative of that. And they're cool about it. Don't go up to someone when they're having dinner with their family and bug them. But if you see them walking in the street, say hi to them maybe, can I get a picture or maybe can I get an autograph? But don't be a jerk about it, Living here in Los Angeles, I've seen celebrities walking down the street, and the most I've done, I've given them a nod. I've said hello, or you did really good in this movie, like, or such and such is my favorite movie. That's really it, though. I'm not going to bug someone. I'm not going to harass them about it because there's no point to it. It makes me look bad. It makes me look like a jerk. Treat people with respect wherever they are, whoever they are, and they will respond in kind most of the time.
It's like going back to the whole respect thing. Say UK YouTuber who goes around rating food, and like it doesn't eat all the food, just eats it enough to rate it to give it a fair shot. And I see in the videos all the time people approach him, and he'll always be polite and kind, and always like says, "Oh, how you doing?" All this, and he lets them take pictures,
sure,
while he's still recording. And I'm like, I feel like not everybody would have as polite response as he does.
Sure,
because eventually you'd be like, "But I'm technically working right now." It's a bit of a inconvenience, some people could say.
Yes. But in that same way, influencers, to a degree, going to put that on themselves because of the platform that they work with. They're trying to get views. They're trying to get people to notice them. But again, if you treat people with respect, then they're going to treat you with respect. Now, I'm also of the mind, and I'm the kind of person that I will give what I'm given. So if I treat you with respect and I get disrespect back, I'm not going to be necessarily disrespectful towards you, but I'm not going to be as cordial with you, right? Because I don't think that anyone is better than anybody else in this world. It doesn't matter if you are, John Doe walking down the street, if you're the Pope, if you are Jesus Christ himself. everyone gets treated the same, just because people are just people.
We're only all trying to get by in this crazy world.
Mm-hmm. Some of the best people I've seen in the entertainment industry are some of the most famous people, because they're humble at times. They're really humble. Denzel Washington is a good example. Denzel Washington has been approached by millions of people, if not just thousands of people, right, over the years, because he's a celebrity, A-list celebrity, in hundreds of movies. And he's of the mind, he said this in interviews, that he's like, I make movies for a living, but it's nothing special. He's like, it's a movie, it's no big deal. He's like, I have to get up and go to work just like everybody else. I just have a different job than you. That's it. Being a public figure is hard. The only taste of celebrity status I've ever had in my life, I had a little bit in high school because I was in different stuff with the high school, and we used to do our morning school announcements. We had a broadcasting program, and I would be on the program every morning. That's what got me started in what I'm doing now. And I was working at a movie theater part-time while I was in school. So I would go to work, and people would approach me that I went to school with, that would know who I was, and I had no idea who they were at all. But they saw my face every day, so they knew me. They thought they knew me. And they'd come say, "Oh, hi, blah, blah, blah." I'd be like, "Who are you?" "Oh, I go to school with you." "Well, I've never met you." "Yeah, but you're on TV every day." And then when I moved here to Los Angeles, I started doing food reviews, much like you do. And I went back to the first place I ever did a food review. They had just opened, and I went back there just to get a bite to eat, and they were watching my video on TikTok. And I was like, huh. And I didn't notice it at first, and they're kind of looking at me weird and speaking to each other in Spanish. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And then someone comes up to me and goes, "Is this you?" and puts their phone in my face. And I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And they're like, "Oh, thank you for the kind words you said about our restaurant." It's like they saw the video. So it's being noticed for stuff like that. I had a job at a company that no longer is in business back in the Seattle area, that I've run into people out here in Los Angeles years after I left that company that remember me. I don't know them, but they know me, because I was doing different characters. We were doing we had events where we had to play comic book characters and whatnot, or horror movie villains, and I did all that stuff, and people remembered me. And it's weird to have those moments, right? As my career progresses, I hope to have more of those moments, but it's still odd to have a stranger come up to you and go, "Hey, I know you. Here's why I know you." And I was like, okay. I'm glad. I hope you remember me for good reasons. I guarantee there's been plenty of people in the entertainment world that come up and someone says, "Oh, I know who you are," and like, "You're terrible in this movie or this show," and it's like, thanks. I'm glad you watched it at least. So that's just me.
Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in, and I'm just going to point this out now, because I don't know if you've noticed. This has nearly been 2 hours.
It has. I keep looking at the timer.
And it's like, it's crazy how content's changed over time, because there'll be short form content, like there'd be at least 8 minutes to like 25 minutes, I guess. But people these days will watch like content for hours and hours. People even fall asleep with content like this because, and I mean this in a very respectful way, they just like to switch off and just enjoy stuff.
Yeah. That's one of my biggest things of why I got into entertainment. Oh, excuse me. Is the idea, I think I told you before, I want people to want them to have those where they can switch off, right? Where they don't have to worry about, the fact that they've got bills to pay, or they had a personal tragedy, God forbid, that they can just relax. A good example is that for myself, like, I will go to a theater, to the cinema, however you want to say it, with certain movies with no expectation. or with low expectations. And the idea is, I understand the movie's not going to be great. I'm going there to have fun. I want it to be a fun movie. Like for the new Venom movie, is either you love it or you hate it. And a very, very good friend of mine back home, who I still speak with on a regular basis, he said, if you go in there with no expectations, just wanting to have fun, you're going to love it. And that's all I care about. There was a time where I would go to movies and I would have really high expectations. And I would be disappointed a lot of the time. A good example of a movie that I watched with no expectations and had a great time with it, despite people hating it, was Five Nights at Freddy's. I know enough about the lore to stay relatively competent, but I recognize that it's a retelling of the story in a different kind of way. They didn't give you an exact time frame or era where it's at. It looked like it might have been the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. And for me, watching it, I was like, this is entertaining for me, right? You have Matthew Lillard absolutely owning every scene he's in as William Afton. From the moment you see him the first time and he's someone else to the last moment you see him in the Springtrap suit, right? His iconic line, "I always come back." Like, he absolutely owned every bit of that movie. Was it a mess? 100%. That movie absolutely was written in not a great way. There's a lot of things that just don't make any sense that they never addressed. But it was still fun to watch. Twisted Metal. There's a Twisted Metal television series on Peacock here in the US. I don't know how it streams in the UK, but if you are aware of that game series, they turn it into an 8 or 10 episode series they did for streaming that rewrote all the lore from the game. And it is a mess. It is cringy at times, but it is absolutely an absolute blast. And I'm very stoked that they're actually currently shooting season 2 right now here in Los Angeles. They're going to start shooting Five Nights at Freddy's 2 at the beginning of the year. Spider-Man 4 starts shooting in 2025. And I'm lucky enough to have the inside track on a lot of these movies because of circles I run in now, which is cool. I know there's a couple movies that they're remaking that have not been announced yet, that no one's going to see coming. And it's just, if people go into movies and television shows, entertainment, wrestling, streaming, whatever, with an open mind, without having these critical expectations of, like, you need to be doing this. If you can just go in there with an open mind and just want to have fun, then I guarantee you'll have a much better time. Because life is too short to be constantly serious all the time. There's too much there's too much going on in this world, and the world is too serious as is. So if going to an independent wrestling show or going to see WWE or AEW, TNA, whatever, PWG out here in Los Angeles, if that makes you happy, then so be it. And if people have a problem with that, that's a them problem, not a you problem. Worry about yourself, as I say. Don't worry about what other people are doing to have fun. If it's not hurting anybody and it's not causing any issue, if it's making you mad just because, it's the meme where you see people like watching a game and someone comes up and shouts at them, "Quit having fun." Why?
Yeah, exactly.
I play one of the most ridiculous characters in EFED with the Moon Master. I do it for fun. He's never meant to be serious. There's nothing serious about that character at all. And it's just taking the piss out of every single character wrestler I know, and just making fun. That's it. If I was gonna be playing serious characters all the time, I'd be bored.
Well,
even when I do it on stage. Sorry.
I think no. I think I appreciate just how, like, fluid and honest everything, like, everyone has whenever they come onto the podcast, regardless of it's one of these roundtable episodes or like an interview episode, because, like, people just, like, let loose, just talk about how they feel, especially in regards of wrestling, because people just, like you say, they take things too seriously sometimes.
Yeah. I think the biggest detriment to wrestling, honestly, is the internet wrestling community because it's so tribalistic. Like it's literally people that are wishing that AEW fails because they're never going to be as good as WWE. When AEW caters to a completely different audience than WWE, right? There are people that tune out what they call the Fed just because it's not for them. I quit watching wrestling for like 6 years up until Lucha Underground came around. And I happened to meet one of the producers of Lucha Underground last year when I was working at Costco. He was wearing a production shirt. And I was talking to him for a minute. I said, why'd the show go off the air? Wasn't for lack of a budget. It's because it was all the insurance money they'd have to pay for the wrestlers and everything else, medical insurance and a bunch of stuff they just couldn't afford. So I guess technically it was a budget, but I mean, I looked him dead in the eye and I shook his hand and I said, thank you. And he said, for what? I said, you got me back interested in professional wrestling when I had completely tuned out, when I didn't care anymore. You brought something different, something that I could appreciate because it wasn't overly serious. It was done as a drama in a way. It was presented that you had wrestling matches, yeah, but there was backstories and it was a constant world that they created in kayfabe of the cartel and like some supernatural stuff. And at one point they had Brian Cage. That's where I first saw Brian Cage was Lucha Underground. They had him wearing this gaudy looking gauntlet that was like possessed by an evil spirit that was giving him power, that was making him more violent. It was at one point, two of the wrestlers, they were undercover cops that were like, going into this shoot fight tournament as wrestlers to take down the owner of the company because he was working with the cartel, and like he'd killed people. And it was this whole big thing. And I was like, you guys made me enjoy wrestling again for the first time in almost a decade. Without a show like that didn't take itself seriously, there's a good chance I wouldn't be an E-Fed. There's a good chance I wouldn't watch WWE. We're never heard of AEW. I wouldn't have cared anymore. But it brought back memories when I was a kid. At least this craziness. That's not was overly scripted, but not in such a way that like was meant to be like in your face about it. People going out there and messing up their lines. You didn't have people going out there, with 4,000 or 5,000 people. It was a small studio space of maybe 200 or 300 people at most. And it was more personal. And again, it's the story. That's what's always caught me about wrestling. That's why I like certain movies, animes, video games. I rarely play online multiplayer games anymore just because I had a bad time with it. But I'm more about the story. Tell me a good story. And you'll keep me enthralled.
I think you make many good points where it's like it's all well and good people complaining, but people don't know what they want till it's not there to an extent.
Exactly.
Like storytelling to me is what keeps me engrossed in it. So like there has been times, I won't lie, where I've been watching AEW. I'm like, I enjoyed the wrestling aspect, but sometimes the storyline aspect can be like up and down in some wrestling companies. And I just like when it just like takes its own direction, it just goes through, and they don't drop anything and it lands. And that's when you just think, oh, this is why I enjoy wrestling.
Exactly. And I think AEW benefits to a degree because they have a smaller writing team, right? I honest to God do not believe it's just Tony Khan writing these stories himself. He has people that produce the matches for him. He probably approves the final product. It is his money to do with as he pleases. But again, we talk about the rumors that Shane McMahon could show up to AEW, right? I don't want to see Shane McMahon wrestling in AEW. If you show me Shane McMahon as an on-screen character figure, yeah, I'm in. Okay. Oh, I know a lot of people that are going to feel the exact opposite. They don't want to see Shane McMahon. And that's okay. That's cool, right? And you'll see if he were to show up in AEW, a lot of people are going to take it that AEW couldn't, get over without the help of a McMahon. The McMahons are still whatever. When AEW just hit their 5-year anniversary a week or two ago, and they've done it all on their own merits. Say what you will about whether you like AEW or not. Warner Brothers doesn't just throw $10 million or whatever it was at a company and say, we're going to have you streaming on our services and put you on our channels. They don't just do that.
No.
Warner Brothers might make some stupid business decisions, and I'll stand by that. But everything has a purpose. Whether that purpose gets met or not is something else entirely. And we'll have to see. The streaming deal doesn't start until next year. So we'll see how that goes. WWE had their own streaming service for years for the network in the US. I believe the network is still a thing in the UK, if memory serves. It's not a thing here anymore. It's owned by NBC Universal, and it streams on Peacock over here. I was a fan of the network. For $10 a month to watch all the pay-per-views at no charge, no commercials, to watch all the wrestling content I could want. I was watching old ECW promos and pay-per-views and stuff, and that's cool. But essentially, WWE needed the help of NBC Universal to stay streaming, to keep up. And now they got bought out by Endeavor. Now they're known as TKO, right? WWE is not even a family-owned business anymore. They're not an independent business anymore. They're owned by a conglomeration now. AEW stands on its own. It's, for all intents and purposes, in the world of wrestling, it's a small business. And I don't care what anyone says, it's been more successful in the last 5 years than TNA was in the last 10. Because TNA has jumped from channel to channel to channel. It was on Twitch, now it's not on Twitch, now it's on this. AEW has been on cable television from the get-go. And they've, had their business dealings. Again, you have Tony Khan got money from his dad, but he's made that money work. TNA needs an AEW or needs a WWE to keep going. They let go Scott D'Amore. No one knows why. Scott D'Amore goes off, creates his own wrestling promotion, and is more successful in one night than TNA was a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In my mind,
I think there's a lot of merit to that, because didn't he supposedly want to buy TNA, but it just didn't happen because
they wouldn't allow it.
Yeah,
they wouldn't sell to him. He was right. From what I've read online, and online being what it is, you never know what's wholly true and what's not. But the rumors were that he got the money together. He was going to buy TNA, and Anthem said no. I don't know why. Maybe because they were about to do business with WWE, and WWE is really what is going to be keeping TNA afloat at this point, because now they're working with WWE, which has UFC and everything else, and then Endeavor just bought a bull riding promotion, which is a big thing here in the U.S. in certain parts of the country. So they're all over the place and stuff. So it makes business sense wise. It makes sense that they didn't sell to Scott D'Amore and they went with WWE and Endeavor as a partner. That makes sense from a business standpoint. At the same time, from the perspective of what the fans want, I think it was a mistake. I think Scott D'Amore would have partnered up with WWE, maybe not as easily or not as they are right now. I think he has his own fan base. I think that he's going to be just fine as long as he maintains the level of goodwill he has with the fans. Then he'll be okay. But essentially, he's doing what Tony Khan did, just in Canada. He's starting from square one, but he has names that he announced that people were going to watch. Josh Alexander being one. He's working with AEW because Konosuke Takeshita defended the International Championship at Maple Leaf Pro at their inaugural event. So he's got stuff going on. So there's a good chance we might see some crossover between Maple Leaf Pro and AEW. I'm cool with that. See someone like Josh Alexander going against Zack Sabre Jr. or against Kip Sabian. I am all for that. 100%. Inject it into my veins, as the kids say these days. I want to see something like that. because you have Scott D'Amore, who is another fantastic wrestling mind, who knows what he's doing. And if he was able to convince Tony Khan to take a step back and listen to words of wisdom, I think AEW could benefit greatly from a partnership with MLB. But it just
definitely
kind of depends.
Yeah, it needs to be a working relationship and not like a "what have you done for me, and I'll do that for you" sort of thing. Like
Exactly. But we'll have to wait and see, because we have Takeshita defending an AEW title on Maple Leaf Pro. So are we going to see Maple Leaf Pro titles defended on AEW? What we don't want to see, we don't want a repeat of what happened with TNA, where Christian wins the TNA World title on AEW Dynamite. No one wants to see that, right?
Yeah.
Just like, no one really wants to see Kenny Omega win the Impact title in AEW and then bring it over to AEW, right? That's cool when he was the belt collector. But at the same time, Kenny, when he was Impact champion, stayed over on Impact, was doing stuff on Impact, right? That's what we want to see. Have your titles defended in your own promotion. Maybe get some crossover with Ring of Honor and AEW because they shoot at the same time. But even then, if you're going to be successful, you need to pump up what you have. In this case, Ring of Honor also needs more promotion. It needs TV deal. It needs a streaming service that's not Honor Club. Honor Club's cool and all, but they're not as mainstream as a WWE, and quite frankly, not as mainstream as AEW or TNA for that matter. And they need that. There are Ring of Honor fans out there that would prefer they never go mainstream, and that's fine if that's what you want. But from a business standpoint, you need to. You want people to make money. Like I would
the gatekeeping their own stuff.
Exactly. I would love to see a match between like House of Black and the Righteous. 100%. I would pay money for that. You have two groups that are the antithesis of each other, but essentially at their core are the same. Two cult-like groups, just going back to very, very different ways. Because watching someone like Vincent promo against like Malachi Black would be money. That's printing cash in my mind.
Oh, definitely.
So.
Yeah, let's need to put pen to paper and figure it all out.
Yeah. But again, I'm just a fan. I'm not a writer for wrestling. I don't know the wrestling business outside of what my friends have told me. The most I know about wrestling is if anyone ever tells me that those chops don't hurt, they can kick rocks. I've taken chops. They suck. They're terrible. They're not fun. And I've taken my fair share. So.
Yeah, I've seen the red marks that they leave on people's chests. That's definitely not what people would make you believe. Like,
no.
That's looks pretty real to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And not all chops are as impactful. A guy like Ric Flair, back in the day, his chops, they hurt. They looked good. And as time went on, they just kind of skate off the chest, and it's no big deal. But you take a guy like Drew Galloway, Drew McIntyre, you can't really fake that. The sound of skin hitting skin like that. I'm sorry. There's no way to fake that. Or a Gunther / Walter. You can't fake that. I'm sorry. There's no way. And that's why every time I see it on TV, like I'm like, that sucks. Like that hurts. It's not fun. A good example of seeing how bad chops can get is Chris Van Vliet did an interview with Sean Spears at his wrestling school. And they, for some reason, said, today you're taking 20 straight chops or 40 chops or something like that. And by the time he was done, his chest was a dark shade of red, was welted and everything else. Because you can't fake that.
Yeah.
I wish more people understood that.
Yeah, the whole, you still watch that? It's fake, right? I'm like...
I tell people all the time, like, you know it's fake, right? And I'm like, well, you're like, movies, right? You know that's fake too, right? Movies fake, but you're still entertained by them. Robert Downey Jr. isn't really Iron Man. He's not really flying around, but you're still entertained by it. You know, I'm sorry, but you know, Carl Urban isn't really Johnny Cage, but I guarantee he's going to be entertaining in the new Mortal Kombat movie. Anthony Starr's not really Homelander, but you still watch The Boys, don't you? You still like that, don't you? What's the difference?
Yeah.
So I have friends that have given me grief about that. One of my friends was like, gave me guff for liking wrestling, but his favorite superhero is Aquaman. I'm like, bro, no, you don't get to have that. You can't sit here and tell me that wrestling is cheesy and fake and tell me that you love Aquaman. Like, I'm sorry, you know. But I did have a friend who said he didn't. He said wrestling was not for him, but he can respect the athleticism that goes into it. I was like, I'll take that. I'm good with that. You know, it's not for everybody. Wrestling is a carny show. It started off in carnivals. And that's the other thing I think most fans forget. Wrestling started off at circuses and carnivals as a sideshow attraction. You know, you hear about people in Russia wrestling bears. Like, it's, again, like I said before a few times, it's silly. Wrestling is silly. So
Yeah. It's cool. That's what it is. It's silly fun, and it's up to you how you enjoy it. And if you don't, that's just that.
Exactly. And it's no big deal. You know, you can enjoy, you know, watching MMA or boxing, whatever, and I get it. It's fun to watch. You're entertained by it. There are people that hate combat sports, and that's what wrestling is. It's a pseudo combat sport. The outcome is predetermined 99% of the time. Yes, but you know, to say it's fake, that's just categorically false. People have been hurt. People have been paralyzed. Unfortunately, people have died. It's, I don't know. I don't like hearing the phrase wrestling is fake just because it's, you know, it's obviously not fake. Predetermined, yes. Is it stage fighting? Yes. Right? But there's just some stuff you can't fake. You can't fake getting hit with a chair or going through a table. You know, getting lit on fire, doing a dive from a 20-foot ladder through glass. Thank you, Darby Allin. I thought you almost died there too. You know?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't get it. I'm convinced people like that they hate fun. That's what I tell people over years. I'm like, you just hate fun. And that's fine. You know, you can go whatever, but you hate fun. That's all there is to it.
It's like, I don't clown on what you like, so why should you feel like you should clown on what I like, sort of thing.
Exactly. You know, I come from a family that's very much into sports. I'm not a sports person. Wrestling and MMA and a little bit of boxing is where I draw it. I will go to sporting events. And that's really it. I was never good at sports as a kid. You know, if I can get some, you know, contact behind a baseball bat to a baseball, I can get it going. Same with a golf club and a golf ball. But that's really it. I can't throw a football. I don't like the physicality of it. It's not for me.
Yeah.
But I got grief for it all the time from people. But then I say I like wrestling, and they're like, well, why? Why not? You know?
Yeah.
Now, I will give people credit where it's due, though. When I say they don't like wrestling, if they bring up something like Nick Gage, I understand where they're coming from. Nick Gage is not for everybody. GCW is not for everybody.
Definitely not.
At all.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's like when people go, "Oh, I remember," they go, "This such and such wrestler." It's like, "Oh, do you still just John Cena still wrestling?" And they go, or like when people go, at least over here, they go, "Oh, I remember Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks." It's still like that. It's like, not quite.
Not quite anymore. No, no, Big Daddy. Oh, jeez, I've heard stories. William Regal tells stories about Big Daddy, and it's Dynamite Kid. You see that Dynamite Kid's nephew is wrestling?
Yeah, I think he was on AEW.
They signed him.
Dynamite or something.
They signed him. Yeah, a couple months back. Dynamite Kid Tommy Billington. He took his uncle's ring name, and he is astounding to watch. He looks just like his uncle. That's the weird part. It's like a carbon copy of the late great Dynamite Kid. You know, and that's the other thing. I don't think that there's certain wrestlers that come out of the UK that don't get enough credit either. Dynamite Kid is a big one. William Regal is, in my mind, one of the best promos of all time. He's one of the best storytellers of all time. And he does not get enough credit for it. I mean, case in point, if you go back and watch when he was King in the Ring in like 2008, like people absolutely loathed him. Because he walked out, he sat in his throne, and he told pretty much people that what they cared about didn't matter. He's like, I am king. Deal with it. And doing that in front of an American audience it takes guts to actually say, forget what you know and the presidency and your government. I am your ruler now. And he was one of the most underrated heels ever. You know, watching guys like him, Pac, Fit Finlay. One of my favorites was Fit Finlay, especially in the early 2000s when he made the jump to WWE when he got his last real run in. Thank you. I'm a huge fan of Canadian wrestlers: Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Josh Alexander, Christian Edge, Petey Williams. Just because they gave something different, something that was not seen. Someone like Pete Dunne wrestles so much differently than someone like Scott Steiner did. Scott Steiner was a little acrobatics here and there, but American wrestling is all muscles and just like power moves. I love watching technical wrestling, like British strong style wrestling, where they take their time and you see joint manipulation, stuff like that. One of my favorite characters in wrestling came out of the UK, and that was Marty Scurll when he was the villain. Before all the controversy and everything that happened.
Before that,
Before all that. And watching him do his promos and watching him work, he changed my perspective on wrestling. Personal views of what happened with him thrown out the window for a minute. He gave the best explanation of modern wrestling where he sat. He said, I'm not a villain. He's like, I'm not a heel. I'm not a face. He's like, I'm an antagonist. Versus my opponent is the protagonist. He's like, because people will cheer me. People love what I do. Despite being an out and out bad guy, which is where the villain moniker came from. Every story needs a hero and a villain. So that's what he was. And he changed my whole outlook on what wrestling was and what it could be. Watching him work and watching him do his thing. When your finishing move is a crossface chicken wing, a very simple wrestling hold, but the charisma behind it and the crowd behind you, despite you doing all this healer stuff, breaking people's fingers, eye pokes, and you get a massive cheer. It was like Eddie Guerrero back in 2004, doing all this stuff, low blows or faking some hits him with the chair, all this heel tactics, but the crowd ate it up. They loved it, and that's what Marty Scurll did for the UK side of things, in my mind. He took that same idea and brought it to the forefront for modern wrestling. And I think we need more people that think that way. Randy Orton's a great one. Randy Orton, when he's a heel, he knows people will cheer him sometimes because they want to see him be that bad guy. And he's so good at it. He can be an antagonist. He can be that cold-hearted, evil, uncaring human being that people love to watch. And John Cena was a heel when he first started. People loved to boo him, and they wanted him to turn heel for so long, and he almost did. He said in an interview a couple years ago that they had gear made for him when he was going to turn heel, that he recorded a brand new theme song that we'll never hear. We'll never hear it. But because of how things went, he didn't turn. Because he was going to turn out at a WrestleMania a couple years back, and he just never did because the crowd wasn't there for it. Like this wasn't the right thing to do. So we'll never know what could have been.
Yeah.
Bray Wyatt, another one where he was obviously a heel, but people loved to watch him because he was so charismatic and he just knew how to get people behind him. We need more characters like that in wrestling. Wrestling or
definitely.
EFED or whatever. Instead of everyone looking at it being everything's so black and white, when in reality it's all just shades of gray. And really, instead of saying I'm a heel or I'm a face or I'm a tweener, and tweeners never work. And I wish people understood that. They don't work because
I think it's like once you give it a word, that means you're admitting. I'm not defeat, but you're admitting that's where your box is. That's where your lane is. I think you need to be a tweener without admitting that you're a tweener. You need it to work well for you, because tweeners in themselves do exist.
they
But
do.
It's better when it's not acknowledged. It's better when they can sort of define themselves.
Yes. But the tweeners do lean one way or the other.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as someone that's truly neutral, because if you don't have a motivation, if you're literally it's you against everybody, no one wants to see that. No one wants to see that. In movies, TV, wrestling, no one cares about that. People want a reason to like you or not. Now, you can be someone that stands on your principles, right? And you might say, I agree with this person, what they're doing, or I agree with the way they're going about it. It doesn't mean that you're their ally or that you're on the same side as them. I've been told by people that I've come as close to being a tweener as you can. And that was not on purpose. I, at one point, was playing a character that started off very much as a heel and then started to go towards being a face. And it took over a year. But the only reason I got to that tweener status is because I was working with everybody. And I had a set story. Here's my end goal. Here's where we are. Here's how we're going to get there. Right? And the way it was done, you had, I can't remember who the champions even were, what promotion it was in for EFED. Yeah, I can't remember. But you had the world champion who was a heel, and you had what would be considered like the promotional champion, like the WWE and the world champion. Yeah, the promotional champion, which was a face. And I was going at both, right? But I never changed who I was character-wise. So people say you got to pick one or the other, and you do. But again, you can tell that story, and you can make it make sense. So if you want to be that more neutral character, you do need to have places you're not willing to go past. And you, at the same time, you have to give people reasonable doubt. If Ryan Shade, for example, were to walk into Sin City Pizza tomorrow, right, and punch Anthony Quinn in the face, just for the sake of argument, why? Make it make sense. It doesn't.
Yeah.
If Anthony Quinn were to go and let's just say Anthony Quinn right now, after everything that just happened in Curtain Call, if Anthony Quinn were to go to the noodle shop and actually burn it down, right? Just again, for argument, why? It makes no sense, right? Versus having the devil on his shoulder pushing him to do that, making him do stuff he doesn't want to do. That makes sense. Maybe not to go so far as to burn down the place, but to have those thoughts, to have those moments where he's going to consider it, to have the devil's advocate moment. And that's all I really wanted to do in that instance. We just never got a chance to really see it through. Because there was outside factors in our personal lives, both myself and Anthony Quinn, that we just didn't get a chance to see it all the way through to the way we wanted to. But it ended in a way that we were hoping to. Aside from the very end of that match, I had no clue, and I'm usually pretty privy to big stuff like that Ryan Shea was going to come out, cash in, and do that. No one told me a thing. All I knew, being open, all I knew was that I wasn't winning the match. That's it.
Hmm.
We decided that like 2 months prior, and we had a set thing to build. So I also know it wasn't when the match. As far as I knew, Anthony Quinn was going to walk out a curtain call with the title and go into the next season as the champion. So when Ryan Shade came through, I didn't see it coming, which is good.
I mean, I think it was Kevin. He was like, "Did I tell you anything? Did I tell you going to win?" And I was like, "No, I wouldn't want you to."
So my first world championship, I actually won off of Jesse. My character was Orange Jamison, based on Orange Cassidy, before he even was in AEW. I knew very little about him, and I just kind of ran with it. Same with Moonmaster being based on Danhausen. I knew very little about Danhausen and Warhorse. I just what I saw on the internet and kind of ran with it. But I got into my first world championship opportunity by accident because Jesse had made a mistake in an RP of saying, he put out this open challenge for his world title for curtain call. So I took a shot in the dark and said, okay, why not? And I think the promo was the character walking up to Karen saying, Jesse, your world title, gimme. And that was it. And I ended up in the main event, in a 4-way in the main event, curtain call. And it came down, it was me, Jesse, Blaze, and Adam Tomlinson in an elimination match. And it came down to me and Jesse in the last, and I almost won it that night because they let the game run itself in 2K19. And I almost won it, and it was literally split second. Like Jesse barely got the 3, and he won. So they gave me a chance at a rematch for episode 1 of season 2. And on episode 1, season 2, main event, I won my first world title. Completely let the game run its thing, and I did it. Now, if you go and ask, I won that title, and then I lost it in like a month to a character called Bobby Legend. I didn't win it back, and I think my characters won that title 2 or 3 times. But it's just funny, and no one told me I was going to win. No one told me I was getting a rematch, anything like that. I thought that curtain call, I was like, I had my shot, didn't happen. I got to start from square one. It was cool while it lasted. And then they're like, literally, they were doing the stream ahead of time, so it was a bit of a delay on the stream itself. So I'm watching it, and I got a message from Kevin that just said, congratulations. And then I watched my character win. They didn't pre-plan it, but they delayed the stream so that no one would know what's going on. And they congratulated me, and it was a hell of a thing. And it was cool to have that moment where no one told me what was going on. So it was cool to have that surprise watching Ryan Shade win, because I've been in the management side of SCW for about 4.5 years. So I've had a lot of stuff spoiled for me, and I've been on the behind the scenes side of EFED for about 6 years. I started doing ring announcing for another EFED promotion. So I got to know debuts before they happened. I got to know surprise returns, all this other stuff. Because the guy running the stream would shoot me a message saying, I need you to do this, to record this intro like right now, because I need it in like 10 minutes. So I get these big EFED names, which was cool to see. And for years, I got spoiled for everything. So it's nice to once in a while have that moment where I'm not spoiled for something. Where I don't know what's going on. When Scott Zero made his return to SCW, I had no idea that was going to happen. Not a clue. Because they kept me in the dark about the whole thing. The curtain call match we just had, all the highlight reel stuff with like David Arquette and whatnot, I had no clue about any of that. I was asked a series of questions about who my character knows kayfabe-wise, celebrities and everything else, to keep playing my character, the Hollywood Blonde and everything else. And I think I mentioned David Arquette to Kevin in passing. And of all the celebrities he picked, David Arquette was the one that makes the most sense because he's a former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. So to have him show up is just a slap in the face to wrestling fans in general. And to have him actually like throwing hands and doing kind of beating someone's ass is a giant slap in the face to anyone that watched wrestling in the 90s and the 2000s. Anyone that's from my generation that remembers those days. So it was perfect in every way for that to go the way it did. And there are things planned that I can't talk about that I'm working on behind the scenes. I don't know when I'm coming back character-wise. I don't know how it's going to happen. I eventually want to join you folks over here at some point to see if the grass is greener, so to speak, and to see what awaits me with a new crop of people while also working SCW. But I want to keep it kayfabe to a degree, and until I make that SCW return, I'm gonna have to stay on the shelf for a while because I want it to make sense. Because it would make sense for me to show up in SCW again after however long it's going to be. I need to talk with the powers that be about that. But to show up and have it be a big deal and then start showing up other places. Considering that the universes are shared. I don't want that to correlate or to something get spoiled.
Yeah. It's like what I did see a difference in opinions going to the whole cash-in situation where some people are like, oh, is this sort of like a hint of Ryan turning heel? Is this the turning point in Ryan's character? And I was like, well, we'll just see what happens.
Well, I don't think that Ryan Shade, and you can tell me I'm wrong. I don't think Ryan Shade is necessarily a majorly heel character. What SCW needs right now is someone to take the spot of the babyface. Anthony Quinn and Jamison Jenson are on the shelf right now. That was the big heel and the big babyface in my mind. For Double Down, I just got drafted character-wise. I have characters on both shows right now. I have Moonmaster. I think Moonmaster and the McGeaters are on. No, Moonmaster and Don Santana, I believe, are on Double Down. The McGeaters and JJ are on Ante Up. But I mean, Moonmaster was going to be a babyface unless I start doing stuff with the Gorgatron, which I don't think I'm going to do. I have plans for Don Santana to eventually switch to a babyface, a tragic babyface, and then the McGeaters are always going to be a babyface team. But we need someone to step into the role of being the big babyface on that show. And because Ryan Shade is the all-in champion, theoretically, that means that Ryan Shade is going to be on Double Down. We need someone in that role. Plus, I honestly think having Ryan Shade as a face, A, it makes more sense, but B, is going to present a bigger challenge. Because being a heel is easy. Being a heel, you can disregard everything everybody says. Most people play it the same. I think playing a face is much more difficult.
It's like when I had that. Well, it kind of was and kind of wasn't a character where I had him go by the nobody. And it was quite interesting when people didn't understand it. And the amount of times I had to explain, I was like, I feel like this is getting across how it's supposed to. But the people that didn't understand it, I was like, it's not sick of it, but a bit frustrated in trying to explain it when to me, it was so obvious with how it came about.
It all comes down to presentation. Because walking and calling yourself the nobody is very counterintuitive. It seems very defeatist. And that's how I looked at it from a management standpoint.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that you are a nobody seems very self-defeatist because a wrestler is meant to be confident, right? That's the whole idea. It's a prize fighter to a degree. They're meant to be confident and to act that way. But there's so much more you can do with that. It comes down to what are your goals, what do you want to do, and how can we further those goals? What makes the nobody a moniker that people can get behind. There's countless ways to do it. It just comes down to how do you want to do it. Thinking off the top of my head, you could call yourself the nobody, and you could do it in such a way that you represent people that thought of themselves as a nobody, so that you can be an inspiration to someone, right? I'm just like you. People think I thought I was a nobody, so I take that in stride to show that you're not. You do it in an ironic way, I'm trying to think here. It's not that easy. But I think Ryan staying babyface is good because we just had massive heel versus massive babyface, and prior to Anthony being champion, Jesse was the All-In champion. He was arguably, if not the biggest heel, one of the biggest heels ever. So we need someone that's going to step up and be that level of a babyface. And I think you have the potential to do that. It just comes down to what do you want to do. We have resources. We have people that are willing to help. If you want to talk about it, it just comes down to evolution, to evolving your character. That's all. I started off my character with a real basic heel mentality. My best friend deserted me from an old promotion. I showed up to ruin his life and to get revenge, and it grew into so much more than that. I've had my character be babyface, heel, somewhere in between, good guy, a bad guy, an antagonist, whatever, the Hollywood blonde, the villain, the assassin. I did a whole gimmick for a solid 6 or 7 months based on a bunch of flash videos I saw on YouTube about Conor McGregor and how he would just go around and punch people in the face and take their belts from them, literally, whether it was the belts on their pants or championship belts. That's all he cared about. He was just crazy. And so I used that, and I was a baby face, assaulting everybody. Baby faces, heels didn't matter. And just became a belt collector as a joke. And it worked. But to go from that to my character, I tried to do a broken Matt Hardy thing for a minute. Didn't work. I can play crazy to a degree, but back then I had no business trying to do that. But it's finding what works, finding your niche. When I stopped trying to be something I'm not is when I found my stride. Like I said, my character is just me. It's just cranked up to the extreme. The way I'm playing my character right now, I'm using the fact that I live in Los Angeles, Hollywood. I literally live in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And I use what I see every day. I watch people. If you want to further yourself and become more realistic, take time, even when you're at work, watch people, see how they talk to each other, see how they interact. And you can get a better idea of how to make yourself more realistic, because people are going to want that. People want something they can relate to. Even rich characters, people can relate to it because they see them in tabloids, or they see them on TV, or they know someone in their life that happens to be better off than them financially. And they have a set, mindset about how that is, right? I want my character to be looked at as just a terrible human being, just a jerk, has a lot of money, flaunts it around, the complete antithesis, complete opposite of what it was when I first got into SCW, before I got into EFED. There was at one point, I remember I was doing an interview segment with Kevin in character, and he said that Jamison is as humble as the day is long. Because that's who I am. I'm not a very out there kind of human being. When I'm not on, when I don't have to perform, I'm pretty laid back and pretty chill. Compare that to where I am now, where I'm he's showing up in a nice car and designer sunglasses and just throwing out the fact that he's got money and he's got 2 different houses, private jets, the complete opposite of what it was. And it makes people hate him. When you have the commentary teams and going back to Hollywood, you rich fuck, just wanting someone to kill him on screen. That people want to see him die. And that's what I want. I want people so annoyed and so aggravated that my character still draws breath that they wish that someone would show up and just end him. It'll never happen. But if I can make people that angry about it, then I'm doing exactly what I've gone out and set out to do.
It's like when I think like I said, I made the whole moniker of the nobody work in such a way where, for the situation it made as much sense it could do without reworking certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So then when he won the Pocket Aces, and then you had Kevin saying all these like big commentary lines, it sort of built up because Ryan had made himself into who he is slowly becoming. Because I thought it was interesting that I had my YouTube name as it is. I used the nickname of one of my favorite wrestlers, Sting, into my character. But I was like, hold on a second. Why does the wrestler believe he's that? But that's the thing. He doesn't believe he's that. It's a nickname he got while he was in the Indies in Japan. So it's more like he's trying to earn the right to be called that rather than he thinks he is that.
My question is, where... And I got to get going here in a minute. It's getting quite late for me now.
I was going to say, yeah.
So my question to you, where do you want Ryan to go from here? You've won the championship. Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here?
I think he needs to actually represent what it means to be champion. He needs to be proud in what he's accomplished as far and continue to improve himself as a character and say and prove and represent what's got him as far as he has, and that explain the fact that he does paint his face still, but that's because that can be replicated into some of his fans. Like, they can do the same thing, and they project themselves onto him, and vice versa. They can see the enjoyment, what he brings to the ring, and he wants them to enjoy the experience of what he brings to the matches.
So would you say he's doing this for the fans, or was he doing it for... Okay, so is he also doing it for himself, though?
I would say he wants to be the best version of himself, but by doing so, he's doing it more for the fans than anything else.
Okay. Yeah. So keep the mentality. Yeah. You're doing this for the fans. You're doing this to, would you say, to inspire people?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Remember, you're doing this to inspire people. So look at characters that are meant to inspire in media, not just wrestling, but everywhere else. A great example, it would be like a John Cena or a Cody Rhodes. Look at what they do. Don't emulate what they do, but pay attention to what they do. Why is it that Cody and John Cena are so over with younger fans, right? Why is that? Because they're likable. They're good. They care about the fans. They're doing this for the fans, right? They're going out. They're doing charities, meet and greets, and whatnot. They're people that kids can look up to, and essentially that you might have looked up to as a kid. So Ryan could be the same way. Look at Ryan Shea, the character, as someone that you, as a child, would have looked up to. It's cliche, it's cheesy, but that's really how you can stay on the path, right? If at any time you're doing something and you ask yourself, what would I have thought about this as a kid? Because wrestling inherently is meant for kids. It's just because of the fan and the way it is, grown adults like ourselves still enjoy it. But especially baby faces in general are really geared towards kids, right? So why does Ryan wear colorful face paint? It helps inspire people because the kids like it. Because people like that kind of stuff because you're an inspiration. My character is not meant to inspire anybody. at all. My character is meant to be hated. My character is meant for people to either feel jealousy or to absolutely want to turn off the screen or to watch a match happen and pray that he loses. I want people to look at my character and pray that someone like a Fulton Reed or who's another big or an Eric Nielsen shows up and just breaks him in half. That's what I want, because I want people to be able to cheer for those people, right? Eric Nielsen has a lot of potential as well, just like Ryan Jake does. The idea that he's a Viking, he's larger than life, he's huge, right? His even his theme song is kind of silly, right? It's very Viking Nordic, it's got flutes and whatnot. Kids can love that kind of stuff. So he can be furthered and he can be looked at as a babyface that people can enjoy. Just like, if it were to come to pass, and it would take time for Ryan to turn heel, it could be that, it could be something along the lines that I've heard rumors that Cody might turn heel at some point. And the idea is that, the fans turn on him somehow. And he just comes out and he says, "You never gave a damn about me or my family." Or it could be he comes out and he's like, "You never cared about me. All you cared about was my dad and my brother."
Yeah.
That's how you turn Cody heel, right? Same thing with Ryan. Somewhere down the line, months or a year or two down the line, if you're still doing this in a year or two, the same thing where something happens and the fans turn on Ryan somehow. Whether an upstart, new upstart babyface shows up and takes your spot and beats you for your title or something like that, and the people are cheering him and not you, right? The fans would turn on you. Same thing. You look at the fans, you never cared about me at all. It's when Bryan Danielson turned heel in WWE and he was like the environmental champion. He kept saying how people are fickle. It's the same concept. It's been done 1,000 times, but it works if it's done right.
Yeah.
We played off the idea that, I became more and more of a heel as time went on, because when I first started my character, it was mentioned the character had gone off and done a couple movies and had opportunities this, that, and the other. But as time went on and commentary really start saying like, the fans are kind of turning on him and like mentioning some stuff that he's done that's not so great. And stuff I did with Anthony to, show that Jamison is bitter and he's jaded and he's jealous. He's human. And he sees someone taking his spot and he doesn't want that. So he does what he has to do to keep that spot. Right? Now he's the bad guy. People looked up to him at one point as inspiration. Now it's not about the people. It's the fact that he doesn't want to lose his spot. He's not willing to let go. So he went into business for himself and became the bad guy. There's more. There was a lot more that was going to be done before that match because we just ran out of time. We wanted to do, and there's stuff I still want to do. If Kevin still decides to do the Blood and Bone tournament, it's that. We'll see how that goes, but
we'll have to see. Like I say, it's all figuring it all out and seeing how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's pretty busy. We all have lives to live, and as time goes on, it's no secret now I'm sticking around for season 5. I can talk about this now. There was a time where I was going to retire because I'm focusing more on my career, my actual career, and my goals. And I chose to stay around after some thought and really putting time into it and really thinking about where I want to go from here. And I don't have a complete direction of where I'm going to go yet with my characters. I've got an idea of stuff I want to do with Don Santana. I've got plans for the McEaters. Me and Kevin have plans for Twiggle and Skeeter. Moonmaster will always be there for comic relief, but there's stuff I want to do with him. I'm not done yet. And now I'm using my personal experiences and stuff I'm being taught in class, acting classes for my own character, for me, and using social media to my advantage. I mean, Twitter/X is all but dead when it comes to EFED. But it's the idea that this character is in Hollywood and wants to use social media to his advantage. So now I'm using my social media, my call social media for that character specifically is being run by an imaginary PR team. So that, like the one I put out a week ago, maybe more than that, where it said, that Mr. Jenson was informed of his drafting to Antioch. He doesn't wish to comment this time, but he does wish to thank his fans who gave him, support during his horrific assault. The idea was that I'm playing the victim now.
Yeah.
Anthony's a terrible person. I can do no wrong. So in that time, I'm going to be playing it from here on. It's going to be a lot of, you're the bad guy, not me. And it's going to go from being, me being a complete hard ass and ready to fight to kind of being like, no, I don't have to fight you. I don't want to fight you. Like being very vain, don't hit me in the face. This is how I make my money kind of stuff. Like, I'm not saying he's going to go full dashing Cody Rhodes or anything like that, or undashing Cody Rhodes with the face mask, but that's where we're going right now. So.
It's all very intriguing, and I think to start to close out, how would you describe in as few words possible what an EFED is to somebody that will watch this podcast and that doesn't have a clue what we're talking about?
This is just a conversation. That's all it is. This is just an everyday conversation. It's about more than EFED. How would I explain this to somebody? It's just two people sitting down and talking about life and about, with the common interest being wrestling and video games and the like. But I mean, in this podcast, we talked about life in general. We talked a little bit about politics. We talked about entertainment, wrestling, a little bit of everything. So I'd say, honestly, this is just a conversation. That's it. And sometimes that's what the world needs. It's just a conversation.
I mean, to be fair, to sum up a EFED in though, that's kind of what an EFED really is. Like, you just fancy playing characters in a conversational way to build up its own little universe to have fun with. But it comes to a point where you want everybody to have fun with it, and just go with it. I don't know how to explain it. It's just
no.
It's like D&D mixed with wrestling, with
exactly
a way to develop literature without even realizing you're doing it.
Exactly. I played D&D once in a great while. I started before I moved to Los Angeles and never got a chance to finish the campaign I was in. I have friends that are still playing the same campaign 2 years later. Or not 2 years later, but a little over a year and a half later. And I've compared EFED for years. I've compared it to D&D. Because if you really think about it, that's what it is. You take attribute points and you're putting it into different categories to make your character stronger or weaker. And you're playing a character. EFED is great for someone that wants to get an idea of performance. For someone like me that's been in performance for 15 years, I'll be 16 next year. Wow, it's crazy. But for someone that's been in it in general, not just EFED, but voiceover, acting, things like that for almost 16 years. Like this has brought me so much confidence in myself. This is a way to build your own confidence and to see, what kind of creative person you can be if you are a creative person. This kind of stuff affords you a creativity that a lot of people don't get, whether it's designing your own character or if someone else is designing for you, playing your own character, making you stop and think about the what ifs of life. It's psychology. It's, creating, as my theater teacher said, creating believable behavior in imaginary circumstances. That's what we do. Some of the best promos I've ever done have all been done under imaginary circumstances, but I use the psychology of my own life and my own experiences in those promos to bring it to life, to make it different. Um, if you ever get a chance to talk with Lazy in a podcast like this, ask him about the promo that him and I did that was about 25 minutes long. It's sitting in the SCW archives. I think you'd have to go searching in the Discord for it, and it's on the YouTube channel. But I mean, it went a long time. There was no music. It was just a back and forth. And I mean, we were both genuinely like not sobbing, but you could tell we were genuinely crying when we were doing this promo. Like it was emotional because it was two people in character and out of character that had worked together for years that never had the chance to work together and were able to bring genuinely believable behavior into a world of fantasy. And there's a lot of people in the world that can't do that.
Well, when it all comes down to it, that's what it's all about: sparking joy, butting heads with each other in a creative way, and that extends to all different kinds of things, not just e-fed, not just wrestling, but it's how people come up with the smallest things, like, oh, your character did this in a video game. Like, that was somebody's idea, like, it wants to, we're just a character going from up to down. Like, somebody first came up with that,
Yeah.
So, what I want to say is now, thank you very much for joining us for this lovely roundtable episode. May not always be 3 hours plus.
Oh, man, no. If you ever need someone back on, I mean, as long as I'm not working on a project and I'm not on stage somewhere, I got time.
Sounds good to me. Is there anything you want to plug?
I mean, a little bit into the podcast, I changed my little headline down there at the bottom of my screen to where you can find all my social media stuff on Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on TikTok at Real Moon Master. I thought it would be funny, but follow me if you want. And you guys will see me in the world of icons sooner rather than later. I just hope you're ready for it.
And with that, this brings to the end of the first roundtable episode. We'd love for you all in the comments, in tweets, and what have you, to give us any feedback as much as you can. This was a spare of the moment thing, but it's something that's been thought of for a while. It's great that we've had somebody that's not been in an episode beforehand, so it's been quite organic, and it's just been nice to just chat. That's just what it is, just a chat.
It's just a chat, exactly that.
But yeah, till next time, we'll see you all later.
Cheers.
Peace out. And